Good evening, members. We'll just introduce Reverend Crawford for prayers.
Let us pray. Lord, we pray for those who are charged to care for the welfare of nations, for the United Nations Organization, for governments and leaders, and for all who vote at elections. We pray that working together they may bring an age of peace when each person and each society feels secure in a world where justice, wisdom, and compassion reign. Lord, we pray for those who are charged to care for the needy, for those who feed and minister to the hungry in other lands, for those who help and counsel the poor and those unable to cope, for all those who raise money to pay for caring work. We pray that in our search for a fairer sharing of the earth's wealth, we may be granted the vision of an age without hunger and without want. Lord, we pray for those who are charged to care for the sick and the dying, the confused and the disabled, and for those who nurse relatives at home. For the staff doctors and nurses in hospitals, homes and hospices, for hospital chaplains and visitors, we pray that as we give comfort and hope to those who are ill, we may be a channel of your peace and love and blessing. Lord, we pray for those who are charged to care for children, for parents and guardians, for those who work in youth centres, for youth leaders, for social workers and probation officers, and for all those who work to provide education. We pray that as we together take responsibility for the nation's children, we may begin to build a society where each child is nurtured and loved. Lord, help us to care for your world. We make this prayer in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you. Good evening, members. Item number 2 of our agenda, apologies for absence.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Gray, Councillor Miles, Councillor Cousins, Councillor Callender and Councillor Watling. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, report of the returning officer on the District Council by-election, St Paul's.
Thank you, Chairman. Report as on your agenda, pages 3 and 4, to appoint Councillor Honeywood was appointed to the Council on the 15th of February. Thank you.
Can I take this moment to welcome Councillor Honeywood back to this Council. A round of applause, please. Item number 4, minutes of the last meeting. Can I ask that they are approved as a correct record? Thank you. Item number 5, declarations of interest. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to declare that I have a personal, non-pecuniary interest in item 16 on tonight's agenda. The reason being, as a member of Clacton Rotary Club, my club has been asked by the Car Rally organisation to run the car parking at West Road, Clacton, for the weekend of April 21st, 22nd. It would be my intention to stay in the chamber. I do not intend to take any part in the debate or the voting, but I would, subject to your ruling, prefer to stay in the chamber if possible.
Thank you. Noted. Please stay. Any other members? Councillor Gugliani.
On item 18, I'm serving as the County Councillor.
Councillor Honeywood.
I'm also an Essex County Councillor.
And Councillor Henderson and myself for the record. Thank you. Any other members, any other interests on the item? Thank you very much. Announcements by the chairman. Minutes. Bear with me. Minutes. We've approved the minutes. Done that. Minutes of the last meeting. We've done that. Declarations of interest. Announcements by the chairman. Sorry? Do that afterwards. Okay. Announcements by the chairman. Thank you to all those that attended the Indian banquet last night. A taste of Bollywood in Holland-on-Sea was something quite spectacular to see. And the recipients of Team Talk were extremely appreciative of your support. Also, I'd like to give thanks for all those who took part in the Pride of Tendring Awards. I'm sure you had a great evening, because it was a very wonderful night. To hear the Tendring fanfare played was something quite spectacular. I'd also like to extend thanks to all the panel members that helped put the evening together, so thank you. Item number 7, announcements by the Chief Executive.
Chairman, if I may, thank you very much. In terms of the first item was the formation of the Tendring Independence Group. I formally report that on the 26th of March 2018, Councillors Benison, Bush, Stevenson and Whitmore, pursuant to Regulation 8 of the Local Government, Committees and Political Groups Regulations 1990, served formal notice on the Council that they wish to be treated as a political group. The name of the political group is the Tendring Independence Group. The leader of the Tendring Independence Group is Councillor Stevenson, and Councillor Bush is the Deputy Group Leader. I also like to report, Chairman, Councillor Brown has also formally reported, pursuant to Regulation 10B of the Local Government Committees and Political Groups Regulations, Councillor Brown has today served notice formally on the Council that he no longer wishes to be treated as a member of the UKIP political group. Both of these items are for noting, Chairman. If I may, Chairman, also, I'd unusually like to actually make a statement tonight myself in relation to a meeting which I attended with Councillor McWilliams this afternoon, because I feel that members do need to be aware of it, and they may hear some of that in the press. The Clinical Commissioning Group governing body met today. One of the papers being discussed on the agenda was a proposed alignment with 3 CCGs. Councillor McWilliams, as portfolio holder and myself, attended the meeting to express our deep concerns regarding these proposals. We have a positive relationship with the CCG and an understanding of our locality. There is a whole range of initiatives which we undertake with the CCG, which are for the benefit of our residents. We are concerned that there would be a dilution of interaction if there was a CCG which covered a large part of Suffolk and across in terms of North Essex, because it would also include Colchester. North Essex has a number of its own very peculiar issues, and I think that most authorities would always say, we are unique. But I think in terms of the very fact that for Clacton, for example, we have the highest number of people per population who have mental health issues. We have the most deprived area in England, and there's a whole range of other issues in terms of deprivation and some of the figures. And therefore, to lose that focus and understanding was real concern. The report, which was reported to the CCG, also did not identify the powers of any joint committees or appointees, and any further alignment, which it did make reference to, was not clearly defined. There was also no financial implications identified. Therefore, I made a statement at the board, and as a result, as did Colchester, and as a result, the report has been deferred by the CCG, and they are now going to take consultation both with stakeholders and have a relook at the issue. I did want members to be aware, because I know a number of doctors' surgeries have also written into the CCG about the issue. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
I'd just like to take the opportunity to comment on the first item in the Chief Executive's report. Congratulations to the new party that's formed. I've no argument about that, but the title is a little confusing. I understand from the report that they're to be the Tendring Independent Group, and all I would say is all around Essex, where I go to meetings and speak or whatever, I'm introduced as the leader of Tendring Independence. And we both virtually, although ours is just the independent group, so quite rightly the word tendering isn't in our group, but it's taken for granted that we are the tendering independents, even though we're only 5. And I would just say it could be a cause for confusion, so we must watch it. Thank you.
Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll very briefly on the Chief Executive's announcements regarding Councillor Brown. He didn't actually say which Councillor Brown, and we have several. But I think we all understood it to be Councillor John Brown. But I just thought I'd mention that for the benefit of clarity, if anyone was in any doubt. I just wanted to thank the Chief Executive and Cabinet Member Linda McWilliams for going along to that CCG meeting and flying the flag for the Council. I have to say we've been working very closely with our colleagues on Colchester Borough Council on this issue. I was in discussions last night with the Cabinet Member there. She's been very supportive, and I think working together we have a much more powerful voice than trying to do this sort of things on our own. So well done to everyone.
Councillor Buke.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say in respect of that last item that I'm sure that many or most of us present will share the Chief Executive's concerns about merging CCGs. Many of us remember the merging of PCTs, Tendring with Colchester, as a result of which we lost about £8 or £9 million of funding, which went up the road and we never saw it. Any further merger will obviously result in dilution of delivery of health services to this district, and I would share concerns and resist any such merger. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I too would like to thank the Chief Executive and the portfolio holder for bringing this to our attention and for standing up for the people of Tendring on this really important issue. I too was concerned when we lost our PCT. We spent several years trying to make sure that we got the money that we needed and to catch up with lots of other areas. Then we were told when we were going to GP commissioning that was going to be better because that was going to put the decision making and control into the GP's hands. Now it looks like we're going even further away and making our GPs and commissioning even further and distant from the residents of Tendring. I hope that this council, when it comes to that consultation, will make it very clear that we object to any further changes and any further isolation to concern residents and patients involved within this Tendring district.
Thank you. Item number 8, statements by Leader of the Council. Thank you. Item number 9, statement by Member of the Cabinet, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Chairman. Recent reports in the media have highlighted that up to half of all local authorities are currently considering increasing parking fees by as much as 45%. I'm pleased to announce that this district proposes no increase in parking fees of any kind for 2018-2019. This continues the policy adopted by this council for a number of years. There has been no across-the-board increase in off-street parking fees and charges by this council for over 10 years, and no other significant increases in any parking tariffs for at least 6 years. This council introduced a parking strategy for Tendring in 2012 with the clear expressed aim of making Tendring a car-friendly district, recognising the importance of the motorist to the economic prosperity of this area. The council remains committed to this not only by bucking national trends towards increasing parking fees, but by also providing all of its council tax-paying households with a free parking permit for most car parks for most of the year. By not increasing parking charges and by providing the free householder parking permit, this council has demonstrated its commitment to local businesses and in particular local high streets throughout Tendring as well as to its residents. Tendring has retained good levels of business occupancy and its high streets and its car parks are well used year round, which is in no small part due to the measures this council has taken to support the motorist. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other members of the Cabinet? No, thank you. Councillor Nichols, your microphone's still on.
Sorry. After the Cabinet meeting on last Friday, I did email Councillor Talbot, and I've emailed him again today, asking if he would be prepared to make a statement tonight on the back of the decision that was made on Friday about our waste and recycling contract, which is going ahead or extended. I think it's an issue that affects all members across this chamber and affects the residents.
Councillor Henderson.
I think it's right
Councillor
that
Henderson,
should have a
I'm
right
sorry.
to be heard and listened to.
Councillor Henderson, if Councillor Talbot had made a statement, then you'd be able to question it. I'm sorry. That may be. Item number 10, Annual Statement of Tendring District Statement. Leader of the Council, Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I realise that the annual State of Tendring Statement is not necessarily the most exciting event in the municipal calendar, so this year I'm going to do it a little bit differently. Instead of giving my take on how things are going, I'm going to give you an entirely independent view. As all members will be aware, we recently had a local government association peer review. The peer review team visited Tendring earlier this month. The team consisted of a senior councillor, chief executive and other senior managers from several other councils. They spent 4 days on site at Tendring, during which time they spoke to more than 90 people, including a range of council staff, together with councillors and external partners and stakeholders. They gathered information and views from more than 30 meetings, visited key sites in the area and additional research and reading. They collectively spent more than 220 hours to determine their findings, which is the equivalent of one person full-time spending more than 6 weeks in the district. And even though the team was only with us for a short period of time, I was very impressed with how quickly and how well they got to know us. It did not take them very long at all to understand who we are, and what we were aiming to achieve. At the end of the visit, the team gave an overview of their feedback, key messages and recommendations. A copy of the full feedback report has been circulated to every member this evening. You should all have it in front of you. So, Chairman, I'm going to quote directly from that report. Tendring District Council is having a significant and positive impact right across its district. The leader, deputy leader and chief executive are passionate and well informed about the area, its local context and challenges. Managers and staff are also committed to TDC. They are well engaged and recognise that the council has been on a cultural journey which is now leading to improvements. TDC as a council has made huge strides since 2010. It has become more outwardly focused and is now an effective community leader. It is a member of the key decision-making bodies in its area. It is acting as a catalyst for more effective and joined-up public services, and it is holding other service providers to account. One of the key messages to emerge from this peer challenge is that TDC is even better than the story it is telling about itself. It is understating its achievements to residents and other stakeholders. Being clearer from the outset about desired outcomes will help it to tell the story of its achievements and successes in the district. Political leadership within TDC is strong. The leader has made a conscious effort to involve all members. Cabinet and individual portfolio holders take a proactive approach to leading on the major strands of the policy agenda. Member and officer relationships are good. Members are engaged and well briefed on issues. They value the informal all-member briefings that take place each month, as well as the other opportunities to be involved. The priorities for the Council are clear and reflect the needs of the district. TDC's community leadership role is widely recognised and respected. Key partners such as the leaders at Essex County Council, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner and the local Member of Parliament for Clacton all praise the Council's leadership role in the community and beyond. It is very clear that the Council is using its community leadership approach to tackle some of its key issues such as education, skills, public health and community safety with its partners. Have I just read that page? No. Despite the challenges faced by the district, the Council is ambitious and has a record of delivering significant projects. These have often been delivered in partnership and the Council has been very successful in leveraging significant funds from partners. The £36 million coastal sea defence scheme is just one example, where with an initial £3 million investment from TDC, it persuaded partners to invest a further £33 million. The scheme has protected 3,000 homes from the sea, regenerated the beaches along the coast from Clacton to Holland-on-Sea, and led to significant private investment along the seafront. TDC's finances are robust. It has already made £13 million of savings in recent years without any significant loss of services. It has adequate reserves and its council tax is low. TDC has a future savings plan that aims to deliver £300,000 of savings each year over the next 10 years. Chairman, I'll stop reading from the report now. What the report makes extremely clear is that Tendring is a council that is working hard and delivering well for its residents. And I'm probably understating again in putting it like that. It is extremely gratifying to hear that from an independent third party. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you and to pay tribute to all our hard-working officers and staff at every level who are contributing every day to that success. And also, Chairman, to all members of this authority, all of us sitting here, who have played their part to make this a better council. However, in the face of such positivity, we should not forget that Tendring still has severe challenges and areas of significant deprivation. The Public Health England Tendring Profile 2017 highlights a number of challenges, with all areas of the index of multiple deprivation significantly worse than the England average, including life expectancy, disease and poor health, adult and children's health and community safety. Only 3 of the 30 factors remain better than the England average, which includes childhood obesity and incidence of tuberculosis. The Health and Wellbeing Report for Essex 2016 identified for Tendring high prevalence of children in low-income families, excess weight in children, number of NEETs, safeguarding needs and hip fractures in the over 65s. We continue to tackle these issues. At Council in January, I set out the Cabinet priorities for the coming year, and we're reviewing the work of our overview and scrutiny committees to allow them to focus on more in-depth pieces of work. The peer review team made the following recommendations. Improve how we tell the story of what we are achieving. Devise an approach to programme management and project delivery. Bring the 4 strands of transformation, customers, property, digital and people, together. Review how we deal with underspends, savings and financial risk, and look at the phasing of our capital programme. Add housing as a strand to our community leadership focus alongside education, health and community safety. And finally, Chairman, we should be confident in our plans for JWIC. These are sound recommendations, and I'm confident that they will strengthen and enhance our approach. Chairman, traditionally the State of Tendring speech can be quite a lengthy affair, but tonight I'm sure everyone will be delighted that I'm not going to say any more. I'm confident that when you read the full report, you will see that it needs no more from me. The report speaks for itself, and I look forward to working with officers, Cabinet colleagues and members generally to implement the recommendations and to take this council forward into a positive and exciting future. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm grateful for that speech and for bringing us up to date with some of the really good news and good work that our officers and this council is doing. But the leader also mentioned about the issues and problems that we face. And the question I'd ask him is he aware of the latest, and he mentioned it about the deprivation scales and poverty levels across this district? Is he aware of the Equalities and Human Rights Commission's latest report, which says that 1.5...
If you'd like to carry on.
1.5 million children are destined to live in poverty by 2020. And also the latest poverty analysis from End Child Poverty Coalition of Charities, which says Clacton alone is facing a 37% rate of poverty within children. So can I ask the leader if he has made representations to his government with concerns that those levels right across Tendring are increasing and will increase in the future. And could I also ask him, has he made any representations to the two MPs that cover this district, as those two MPs have recently just voted to do away with free school meals for children in this district, some children in this district, which will make those poverty levels even worse. I note that the council on their adverts, on the vacancies, are listing some vacancies on our lifting services, which Careline does. Can I say to the leader that I'm really pleased that we are still carrying on with that lifting service for those people, vulnerable people in their households. But is he aware, and can he raise with Essex County Council that concerns that they've now withdrawn their falls and lifts funding for residents around Essex, and what impact will that have on services around this area? What representations has he had with the Essex County Council on their recent reductions in funding to our third sector, which is about 400,000 in their budget this year? Will he join me tonight in paying tribute to our third sector workers who, without their hard work and dedication, we would not be as successful as a district as we are? I do not know what we would do without them. Is he prepared to raise concerns with Essex County Council on those lines? Could I finally ask him to join me and take this opportunity to thank our emergency services that cover the whole of this district? We do not know where we'd be without those ambulance crews who are overstretched at the moment. We do not know what we would do with those NHS workers at the moment who are seeing lots and lots of underfunding. And we certainly would not be able to cope without those police officers which are on our streets of Tendring day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, with limited resources. Would he take this opportunity with me to thank them for all their dedication and commitment to the residents of Tendring?
Councillor Stock.
Well, I thank Councillor Henderson for that rather detailed and exhaustive list of things, and I apologise in advance that I wasn't taking notes. So there were an awful lot of things that he asked me to do. I would make the observation that it isn't my government. I think it's our government, isn't it? Theoretically, at least. I think I understand the point he was trying to make when he says that. It's a bit like me suggesting it's your Labour Party, Ivan. I don't suspect you want to take the credit for it. I am often in dialogue with members of Parliament. I spoke to Bernard Jenkins just yesterday evening, less than 24 hours ago, and I spoke to the Member of Parliament for Clacton about an hour ago, funnily enough, on the issue of health, and he's got a big announcement which very frustratingly and annoyingly is embargoed until midnight, so I can't say anything about it. But all I would say is watch this space and see what comes out of the pen of the gentleman from the press over there tomorrow. But I understand that good news is on the way in respect of something, at least, that Councillor Henderson was talking about. In respect of speaking to the County Council, I think we have excellent relationships with the County Council, as articulated in that report, where they actually quote the leadership of Essex County Council saying what great partners we are, and I do think we have a really good relationship with them. And that relationship is sometimes about us standing up to them and saying we don't like what they're doing, just as well as supporting them when we do like what they're doing. However, having said that, I'm not a member of that authority, and I understand Councillor Henderson is, so I think you're probably better placed in many respects to take up some of those issues with the county than I am. But I will continue to fight for this district and continue to try and make this council as good as it possibly can be to serve the residents, because undoubtedly some of the statistics and the figures that I was quoting there are very real and are going to become very real, and we are going to need to do everything we can to deal with them. It's a point, I think, worth making when you consider the performance of a council. If you've got a local authority in an affluent, successful area that doesn't have a coastline, that has got full employment, how easy life must be for the members and the officers of that authority. In Tendring, we've got the most deprived community in the country. We've got the longest coastline of any district in the country, and yes, it's crumbling into the sea unless we stop it. And there's an awful lot of challenges and problems and issues that we have to deal with. And when you have a district with the social and economic demographics and the challenges and the problems that we face, that's when you really need an extraordinarily good council. And Chairman, I actually think we've got one, and I'm really proud to lead this council, proud of the officer team that we've got, and actually proud of the members we've got. Thank you.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you. Item number 11, petitions to council. There are none. Item number 12, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. We have 3 questions this evening, and they're all on the same subject, so I'd like to ask each person in turn to come up to the table with the microphone and read their question. And then at the end of the 3rd question, I will refer back to Councillor Stock to respond. And then we will move to item 16, because it follows on nicely from the questions that are being asked. So if I can invite, please, Mary Noland of Stones Green. Thank you. If you can press the microphone button when you get to the table.
I'm a retired pensioner and I live on the Stones Green Red route of the proposed Tendring motor rally. It's not clear that the MSA insurance policy sent to me for perusal covers damage to me or my property, as promised by the event organisers. It would appear to be a standard business insurance for professional indemnity against their negligence, not for speeding competition driver error. In fact, the drivers are required by organisers to sign disclaimers for any accident or damage, and they have no requirement at all to be insured on the competition routes where they will be speeding. This despite European directive that the VNUK law should be applied and that they should now in fact have cover for all circumstances. Claiming from the MSA in the event of a competitor accident loss does not therefore appear to be possible when the drivers are all but uninsurable when speeding along the red routes. Given that the Council has a duty of care to its residents, how does the Council plan to protect property from damage and from future substantial increased insurance premiums for the significantly higher risk of living on a racing track other than to ensure that the event does not go ahead?
Thank you. If you'd like to be seated, and we'll ask Caroline Lindsay, please, to come forward. Thank you. You'll need to press the little button to activate. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Council. I strongly believe that there is a very grave national security concern surrounding the staging of the Tendring Rally event on the 22nd of April, or similar events that follow in the future. Neither the drivers nor the marshals are required to be criminal or mental health checked, and anyone can enrol as a marshal with an hour's online training and no formal identification. The policing will largely be taken on by these lay people. A car could easily be maliciously driven at high speed into the crowds by an aberrant driver on the day. Given that the Council has a duty of care to its residents, how does the Council plan to fully protect them from malicious attack, other than to ensure that the event does not go ahead? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Neil O'Hare, please, if you'd like to come forward.
Good evening, Council. I am concerned about the safety controls for the event in relation to the marshalling I presume there is a risk assessment that the organisers have provided for the rally, and in order for this to be suitable and sufficient, the risk assessment would, I expect, include the minimum number of marshals required to safely police the event, their locations, duties and level of qualification required. As the event is stretched over a considerable portion of the day, it would seem reasonable that there would be sufficient additional marshals to relieve people who have been at their posts for long periods or who need to step away for other reasons. My concern is that I have seen comments in the public press reported as being made by the organisers stating that, and I quote, between 500 and 1,000 marshals, presumably suitably trained and registered as appropriate, would be available. This is obviously a wide range and gives no indication of what the absolute safe minimum number of marshals is. Presumably the risk assessment is explicit about this. In relation to these concerns, my question is as follows. Has TDC had access to the risk assessment, and has this been examined by a suitable person who is qualified to comment as to its suitability and sufficiency? Does the risk assessment include a minimum number of marshals required to safely run the event, and what would happen if the level of marshals available fell below the minimum level before or during the event?
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all three questions. Thank you very much. And Councillor Stock.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I too would like to thank those three members of the public for taking the time and trouble to come along here tonight and put those questions to us. And I've got a fairly detailed, Chairman, as you can imagine, answer, which I shall now give. It's important to make clear from the outset, of course, that the car rally is not a Tendring District Council event. We didn't propose the idea, we haven't organised it, and we're not running it. The Council has a role as part of the Safety Advisory Group and to provide advice to the event organisers in connection with public events, given our record of successfully running the Clacton Air Show, international cycling competitions, beach activities and other similar large gatherings. The Safety Advisory Group is a multi-agency group which is formed to provide advice to organisers of significant events. This is any event where it is likely that more than 499 people may be involved, and to advise them where any formal permission may be required. Depending on the event, different organisations may have a more prominent role in providing advice, and a different service may chair the group. The Safety Advisory Group will almost always have a significant input from all blue light services, which will provide advice in respect of areas as diverse as minor first aid provision to counter-terrorism measures. The Safety Advisory Group has no power to prevent an event taking place, but clearly any organiser which does not heed the advice of the Safety Advisory Group would be in some difficulty if there were a problem with the event. The Safety Advisory Group requests the event organiser to submit an event management plan ahead of the event, which shows that the event organiser is cognisant of health and safety, security, health, food hygiene, safeguarding, counter-terrorism risk, etc., and is putting in place mitigating measures. The Safety Advisory Group can provide advice to the organiser in respect of risks if this is required. I understand that the event organisers have attended several Safety Advisory Group meetings and, as far as can be determined, is meeting all requirements being requested by the blue light services. Therefore, I can reassure you that suitably qualified agencies have provided advice to the event organisers in respect to their risk assessments and operational plans. As I'm sure you will appreciate, much of the information in respect of the operation and organisation of the event is not available to the public for fairly obvious reasons. The Motorsport Association is the governing body for four-wheeled motorsport in this country and is responsible for authorising and administering motorsport across the UK. The Motorsport Association arranges third-party liability insurance cover for all events, cover being up to £65 million per claim. The Highways Authority and the event organisers will survey, record and photograph all assets along the route to ensure that no asset is left in a worse condition after the event than it was before the event. Any damage will be the responsibility of the event organisers to make good. This is the first event of its kind to be held on public roads in England, and we are advised that such is the interest amongst motorsport enthusiasts that the organisers have been able to restrict entries to only those who have obtained the highest level of motorsport licence. As such, I think it would be reasonable to assume that they are going to be well qualified and highly skilled drivers. We understand that no permission has been granted by the Motorsport Association for any further such events this year, and that the Motorsport Association will review the tendering event prior to granting permission for any future such events. I can equally reassure you that, as with any event which takes place within tendering, we will be reviewing this event in detail, but, as I'm sure that you may be aware, many events take place organised by a range of organisations across tendering, some of which do not have our support nor the support of other agencies, but there is little that can practically be done to prevent them from taking place. I am also advised by the Cabinet Member for Highways at Essex County Council that the road closures for the Motor Rally event have been granted, and all the relevant information regarding these is publicly available on the website www.roadworks.org. It's a website I was not familiar with, but it's worth a look, because I put my own postcode in and discovered that the road outside my house is going to be closed for 2 days very soon, which I knew nothing about. So it's a very good website, roadworks.org. I am further advised that while there is no legislative requirement to consult or advertise the closures, a consultation with all residents and parish councils has been undertaken by Chelmsford Motor Club. However, there is no planning permission required or any event licensing required to hold an event of this nature. I am assured that the correct legal procedure and requirements have been followed by all parties involved to enable this event to safely take place. A resident's handbook will be published and delivered to all residents living on the route or close by, giving detailed information about the event and instructions on how to arrange access to properties, as well as other useful information. The Chairman, I do recognise the concerns expressed by the 3 residents who've spoken tonight, and I accept that motorsport is not to everyone's taste, and that roads being closed can be annoying and disruptive. But I also recognise that this is a district where tourism is a vital part of our economy, and where we struggle to attract traditional businesses due to our rural and coastal geography. So I will continue to support and encourage events that offer the opportunity to put tendering on the map, to show that we are innovative, creative and open for business, and above all, which can contribute to our local economy and ultimately help to create much-needed jobs and employment. And I would urge all residents to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stock. We're now moving to item number 16. Councillor Calvert, there's no debate on this item following Councillor Stock's statement. Not on this occasion. I'm moving to Councillor Bush, item number 16.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, as you're mindfully aware, in January 2018, I submitted an amendment to Councillor Nicholl's motion to reduce speed around our schools, villages and towns, which I withdrew. On the basis of withdrawing my motion amendment, I was encouraged to submit this motion independently to oppose the closed road motor rally event for debate and consideration, welcomed by the leader, Councillor Stock, and also welcomed by Councillor Coley and Councillor Calver. So, members, I stand here before you this evening submitting this motion for debate and consideration. But hey, it appears the ship has sailed, or should I quote Neil, the car has really zoomed in. Without a members' debate, the leader of the council has brought it upon himself to fully support the event.
I don't think so.
I'm of the opinion this demonstrates an action of duplicity. Furthermore, a completely undemocratic decision. There also appears to be no record of meeting minutes, formal decisions or authorisations during this planning of the event made of...
Councillor Bush, I apologise. Really, you should be reading your motion first, have a seconder, and then give your statement. Thank you. That's okay.
Motor rally sports events are recognised as perilous activities, which continue to claim lives of both experienced and accomplished drivers and spectators, even with stringent safety and security measures in place. This is clearly evidenced with fatalities in the UK organised events as recent as December 2017. The Motorsports Association statement is that this is a stark reminder of the inherent dangers that this sport suffers, or we love. This council demonstrates intolerance for speeding and advocates considerate, safe driving in our towns and villages. To support stage road motor rally and unregulated high-speed racing events in the Tendring district would conflict with the overarching ethos of this council and expose the Tendring residents and spectators to unprecedented risks. Many of our rural roads within this district are renowned accident black spots, experiencing far too many fatalities and serious collisions. These events could create a legacy of carnage, and in their wake, the probability of encouraging future adrenaline-filled aspiring racers to test their racing skills with potential fatal consequences. This motion requests that the leader of this council informs as soon as possible the respective motor racing associations and governing bodies and organisers and Essex County Council Highways Authority that Tendring District Council does not support or endorse staged motor rally events on the roads throughout the Tendring district.
Thank you, Councillor Bush. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Chairman. I wish to second the motion. I'll speak now, if I may.
First, and then I'll come back to you. So, Councillor Bush, I apologise for interrupting your statement. If you'd like to carry on with that.
Thank you, Chairman. I continue to have grave concerns with regard to Chelmsford Motor Club's approach to safety measures, logistics, inept communication to residents and spectators. Placing straw bales in front of propane tanks on one of the most challenging chicane routes does not instil confidence. Residents requesting to make calls to race liaison officers for permission to leave and return to their homes is absolutely appalling. I have witnessed a number of significant potholes on some of these routes in the past few days that have been highlighted, and I fear that these will contribute, unless repaired, could create a loss of control to the vehicles, threatening the safety of drivers, navigators, the public, property and wildlife. I would like to go on to say, also members, I wish to remind you of the motion submitted by Councillor Fairley in May last year to improve safety measures at Shiphill Brinkman's Bridge that had claimed so many lives and serious injuries over the years, which was overwhelmingly supported by this chamber. The safety measures have still not been fully completed or implemented, and safety risks still remain relevant. A stage rally will cross that Brinkman's Bridge en route between Bradfield and Missley, at speeds approaching 100 miles an hour. Councillor Fairley, now Cabinet Member for Investment and Growth, is quoted as saying that this rally is good for business, driving up investment for tendering, which I find is a shift in position from that motion to be both absurd and disingenuous. Members, do we wish to be recognised by the public as favouring money before people, risk before residents? It remains a ludicrous and beyond belief that there will be 120 motor rally vehicles tearing up the Tendring Peninsula over 45 stage miles. This will be the first closed road experiment, and it is an experiment in England, in my opinion, and is nothing more than a perilous folly to satisfy the egos of petrol heads, filling the air with carbon monoxide in our countryside, causing potential harm to people, wildlife, damage to property and further damage to our roads, as well as unacceptable disruption to our residents on Sunday, a day of rest. I certainly do not want to be held accountable or responsible for leaving a legacy of carnage in the aftermath of this event. And finally, a resident reminded me yesterday of Tendring District Council's coat of arms and crest, pro bono omnium, for the good of all. Members, therefore, for the good of all, I encourage you to consider and support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Porter. You need to stand and use the microphone, please.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm a member of Chelmsford Motor Club, so I need to declare an interest in that.
Thank you. Noted. Councillor Buke.
Thank you, Chairman. Is the councillor going to stay in the meeting? I ask.
That be for the councillor to decide.
Chairman, I'm here to protest not only against the rally, but particularly against the entire process. And this evening we've heard Councillor Stock make his own statement about the rally in response to the questions. This is the first time that any elected member has spoken about the rally since it was first developed in 2014. In the space of 4 years, not one councillor has spoken about the rally, for the rally. And I know that officers and others have claimed that this rally has nothing to do with tendering. Clearly that is rubbish. It is to do with tendering. It's in our district. It's not going to be on our seafront. It's going to be on our greensward. It's going to be in our car park. We're members of the Safety Advisory Group. It is to do with tendering. I shall be calling for a named vote, Chairman, when we get to this, but it's a fairly racing certainty, I think, that either before or after the rally event, my apologies, there will be a complaint made about the Members' Code of Conduct applying to successive leaders and cabinet members since 2014, because they are all culpable in failing to comply with the Members' Code of Conduct within the Nolan Principles in some respects. The idea was first hatched, I think, between Councillor Bass of Essex County Council and Councillor Page of this council, both of whom are no longer councillors. Indeed, in 2015 there was the local elections and the councils have all changed since then. We are not the same council as we were then, nor is Essex County Council. However, our own leader and his cabinet members and others have been saying they're revving up support for the event. There has not been a single shred of evidence or statement or report or discussion or vote or scrutiny on this event in the space of 4 years. Nothing. It is clear that members on the other side of the chamber have been sworn to secrecy during this period so that nothing would be decided or voted on against it. It's clear, and it has been said that some concerns have been expressed by residents along the routes. I've travelled along 2 of them myself. I'm aware of a propane gas tank alongside one of them. I'm sure there are several others along the other routes within a few yards of the road itself where cars will be travelling at speeds up to, as Councillor Bush has said, up to 100 miles an hour, maybe less, but still within a few yards of propane gas tanks. I've read here and heard that these are going to be protected by straw bales, even though it does say hay bales. I'm sure they mean straw bales. And it is my belief, and others, insurance companies included, that they will need something more robust in the form of concrete blocks or something of that strength to protect propane gas tanks from being exploded through collision with a speeding vehicle. Others have expressed concerns about the environment, and I'm well aware of those. There will clearly be lots of creature deaths along the road during those days. Bearing in mind the roads will also be closed on the 20th for practice runs, and the 22nd when the race will take place itself, which I think is the day before St George's Day. And I don't know whether Mr Councillor Bush mentioned it, but St George's Day is the 23rd, and I believe the St George's Day parade is going to be affected on Sunday the 22nd. There is an event management plan somewhere. I haven't seen it, but I'm hoping that a portfolio holder has seen it. Nevertheless, Tendring Council some months ago gave a green light to this event, and I don't know on what basis, because there had been no discussion, no decision issued, none of which we are aware. So how can the council give permission or a green light to an event that has not been discussed or documented? If it isn't in writing, it didn't happen. At the members' briefing 2 weeks ago, we had a briefing from an officer. There were cabinet members present. Not one cabinet member spoke about the rally in favour of it or otherwise. The Chelmsford Motor Club claimed to have attended all affected parish and town councils, but we know from evidence that there are strong objections at least one of those. They agreed to consult all parish and town councils, not just the ones that are affected, but all parish and town councils. They could have done that by attending the District Association of Local Councils, but they didn't do that either. So, Chairman, I understand fairly reliably that Essex County Council have not yet approved this event. Essex County Council, I'm told, have approved the routes. I'm waiting for somebody to tell me whether the County Council have approved the event. I'm not aware of that. I appreciate that Motorsport Association have, and indeed Chelmsford Motor Club have done their own approval process, but it is my belief that the people of Tendring don't want this dangerous practice on our roads, particularly our narrow rural roads where people travelling into the district from afar won't be aware of the road closures until they get here. So, Chairman, I do support the motion in seconding that, and I call for a named vote when we come to it, Chairman. Thank you.
Councillor Griffiths.
just trying to get the equipment to work. We seem to be going. As the St James Ward is going to be hosting part of the verification on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, we obviously have an interest. I have to say that Morris and I certainly have not been sworn to secrecy, neither are we putting money before people or risk before residents. Our concern has always been and will always be the residents of St James. We understand through meeting with the organisers that part of the greensward and our car parks in the St James Ward will be used for this event. We're looking really for the council to give us the assurance that over these 3 days our residents will be safe. We understand that unlike the rural areas, we won't have speeding cars sort of crashing through various hedges or whatever, and that people will mainly be driving under the legal limit to areas where car pieces and mechanics will be waiting to support them. However, we still will have a number of vehicles in a very, very small area. There will be a number of visitors visiting the greensward and other car park areas. There will also be lots of support vehicles, mechanics, drivers and whatever in a very, very small area of Clacton Seafront, based from the hospital to the golf club. Our initial meeting with the organisers was quite positive. Our initial meeting with the council officers was very positive. We're not opposed to the event. We just really need clarification. Our concern has always been that not enough evidence has been given to us, not enough detail has been given to us. We're still unaware of which roads will be closed and for how long, for how residents living on Marine Parade West, for example, are going to be exiting their property, what arrangements we have for some of our older ones who live near the seafront areas and who may have home helps. These are things that we've sought clarification but have not yet arrived. St James does have things like cycle rides and air shows, and in the past they've been very, very successful. We have been blessed with a good relationship with most organisers from these events and from council officers, and we look for this to continue. Our plea tonight would be, please give us the details that we can share with our people. That way we can iron out any difficulties before they arise. Morris and I have a great feel for our ward, a great feel for our community, and we feel that they deserve to know more before this event comes. I'm sure that there is limited risk to our people, but we really would like the assurance from those organisers of what the risk would be, if any, and how we and our local community can enhance the rally. We look forward to the answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Calver, your moment for clarification. Please remain seated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I may refer back to the 3 questions asked by the members of the public, and forgive me, Councillor Stock, if I am in error on this. You certainly addressed the issue of the insurance raised in the first question, and by your reference to the level of licences held by those taking part in the rally, I believe you did actually address the issue raised in the second question. If I'm correct, though, you made no reference to the issue in the third question about the level of stewarding. Was there a minimum level named in the risk assessment? And what were the views on this very open-ended 500 to 1,000, which I must admit hadn't crossed my mind until the question was asked, but is very relevant because that is a very wide-ranging difference in the number. So if during this debate you would be prepared to rise and actually answer the third question, I'm sure the member of the public who asked it would appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to voice my concern
that we were not consulted and had no opportunity to debate what appears to have been a done deal by Essex County Council. People living along the routes concerned have a legitimate right to raise issues before the decision is or was made. This did not happen. We have not been able to represent ward members and others concerned by this race. It appears to me to be an abuse of democracy by Essex County Council, and I would like us as a council, to express in the strongest possible terms that there should be meaningful consultation for any future events, when the undoubted pros but undeniable cons can be properly discussed and democratically debated. So I do support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stock, are you if you wish.
Yeah, a couple of points have been raised there. Thank you, Councillor Calver. I didn't specifically refer to the numbers of marshals. As I understand it, that's all part of the details of the risk assessment, which I did refer to as being something that I've not been privy to. It's something that the Safety Advisory Group have been involved in. I'm happy to try to obtain an answer, a more detailed answer to that after the meeting, but at the current time I don't have a more specific answer to give. Clearly, Councillor Calver was listening intently and did pick up on everything I said, and in particular what I didn't say. So well done to him. Unlike Councillor Buke, who didn't hear me say that the road closures for the motor rally event have been granted, and all the relevant information regarding these is publicly available on the website, www.roadworks.org. So it has been granted, I think, well over a month ago. I can accept the point Councillor Davis just made about the lack of consultation. Apparently there is no requirement to consult whatsoever. The Chelmsford Motor Club, whatever they're called, Chelmsford Motor Club, have been around every single house on the course. They've spoken to parish councils. They've done an awful lot of public engagement. I don't expect everyone to like the engagement that they've had, but they have done an awful lot of public engagement. And they have changed the route several times and in lots of different ways to take into account people's concerns and issues. And I have a lot of sympathy for people who cannot bear the idea of a motor rally event taking place past their house and the inevitable inconvenience it would cause them. I just think that this could be good for Tendring. In respect of us as a district and the involvement we've had in this, Councillor Buke and Councillor Bush seem to think there's some sort of sinister plot afoot, and I can assure them that there isn't. We haven't made any secret decision because we haven't made any decision. We haven't been asked to make a decision. There is no decision in respect of this for us to make as a district. I just expressed my personal view in response to questions that were put to me. I haven't been asked before. I'm not known for being shy and coming forward with my opinion on anything, and if anyone had asked me, I'd have given my opinion at any time. It may have changed over the years, but at this present time, I think, yeah, I recognise and I have a great deal of sympathy for the concerns expressed. This event is taking place. What I think we need to do, and what I'm going to be recommending, is that after this event, we carry out, and there will be a debrief carried out by the Blue Light Services, by the Safety Advisory Group. I referred to that in my answer, but I think our Overview and Scrutiny Committee, the Community Leadership and Partnerships Overview and Scrutiny Committee, needs to gather together and collate all that information from the Blue Light Services, from the event organisers, from people who are very upset and concerned about it. Are they still concerned? Was it even worse than they feared? Was it not quite as bad? And we do a thorough and detailed piece of work. And if we don't like what we've found, then we make the strongest representations at the earliest stage that it doesn't happen again. This event's taking place. There was no need to apply for planning permission. There was no need to apply for licensing. There was no need for anyone to consult with anyone. Yes, I have a lot of sympathy for the view expressed by Councillor Davis that we should complain to Essex about that. I can't support the motion because it doesn't really make sense to me, because this event is taking place. I'm happy to make representations, as I say, especially following the backing of an overview and scrutiny investigation into the event after we've had it. And if it's not good for Tendring, I'll be the first one to lead the charge saying we don't ever want that again. In the meantime, this event is taking place, and cognizant of those concerns, I think we need to try and support it, make sure it goes as smoothly as possible, and learn from it and see what can happen next time, whether we have it or not. If you think about it, when the air show was first put on 25 years ago, at the peak of our holiday season, on the August bank holiday weekend, when our beaches are at their most crowded, our hotels are their fullest, and we decided my predecessors on this council, our predecessors, decided 25 years ago to stage an event where lots of vintage aircraft, some of them very old, thunder up and down above thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on the beach. That could have seemed like a crazy idea. It probably was a crazy idea, but it's been successful, it's worked, and now we wouldn't dream of cancelling it. The Tendring show brings in 75,000 people into this district and from across this district for a single day. If you live where I live, it's incredibly disruptive because you're locked into your house or you're locked out of your house, whichever, because the road is completely congested all day long. But it's a superb event, it does wonderful things for the economy, and it flies the flag for this district, and we're really proud of it. Hopefully this event could become similar if we can overcome these concerns and make it work for us as an event that we're proud of. And if we can't, we'll do everything we can to stop it. But in the meantime, Chairman, I'm afraid I won't be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Guglielmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Likewise, I cannot support this motion for the simple fact that there is a huge amount of ambiguity and scaremongering being thrown into the mix. I will understand the concerns of our residents, which have been so eloquently been put to us. The one thing that I will not condone, I will not understand, is the insinuation from Councillor Buke, Mr. Chairman, of the code of conduct. Apparently we've all breached the code of conduct. This council was never formally consulted. There was an idea put to the previous leader, as Councillor Buke states, and that was carried. I have an email here which has been part of the body of the response of Councillor Stock to our residents, that the event did not need any special permission as such from this authority. All legal requirements have been fully met, and as such, they've complied with all requirements that they were asked to be required to comply with. The one thing that it's really quite obscure, I can't believe the insinuation that we have conducted this in smoke-filled rooms, in a dark room somewhere, away from all the public, for no one else to know. This has not been the case. It categorically has not been the case. This is the first time that, there was an all members briefing where people were more than capable to ask questions of our officers which were presenting the event, and that was really the first time I had some in-depth information given on the event. There was never, ever any consultation carried with us or any secret deal done somewhere else, and therefore I cannot support this motion. That it says that Tendring District Council does not support the motion. What's the event? What's it going to do? He's not going to stop the event. Permission was given to the event back in 27th of February. Essex County Council Highways gave permission to all the road closure as far back as February. So therefore, the motion it will not achieve very much at all, Council, because if it was something that we had control over it, then I would understand your point, but we don't, and therefore, as such, Mr. Chairman, I will not support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Guglielmi. Councillor Butte, you've already spoken. You have. As a member of this council that's organised a large-scale event for this district, I'd just like to share my experience on that. I didn't have to come to this council to ask for permission. I did go through all of the safety advisory group meetings. There were a significant number of them, and it didn't require the permission of this council or any other council, and it brought a very noisy, dirty steam engine thundering through the district at quite some speed, to the benefit of some thousands of people that came from far afield. So it wasn't anything that was granted. There's no permission actually that's given. With that, we're going to move to the vote. I believe Councillor Buke. Oh, Councillor Buke, you want to reply? Okay.
May I make a point of information? Councillor Stock has said for the first time that the views expressed about the rally were his own, whereas he's been reporting in the press for several months now that the council is behind it. The council has not been behind it for 4 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Bush, you wish to close?
Oh, should I? Yeah, just really respond to Councillor Guglielmi regarding the motion, and obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the ship has sailed. I did submit that motion, as you know, in January, and I withdrew it, and at that time the decision was made by Essex Authority regarding the authorisation. I submitted that prior to me going to leave, which was also before Essex County Council made that decision. So I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't submitted after the decision. So at the time, I felt it was valid. Thank you.
Councillor Scott, was there anything else you wish to add? We'll go to the vote. You've asked for a name vote. Do you have the numbers, Councillor Buke? I believe you do. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to the Chief Executive for a name vote.
Okay, members, thank you. I will read out your name. Please state clearly whether you're for, against or abstain on the vote. This is for the motion as proposed by Councillor Bush. Councillor Alexander. Amos. Baker. Benison. Bray. Broderick. Brown. B.E. Brown. J.A. Brown. M. Brown. Buke. Bush. Calver. Cawthron. Chapman. Chittock. Coley. Davis. Everett. Fairley. Ferguson. Fowler. C. Griffiths. G. Guglielmi. V. Guglielmi. Heaney. I. Henderson. J. Henderson. Hones. P. Honeywood. S. Honeywood. Khan. King. Land. Massey. McWilliams. Newton. Nichols. Pemberton. Platt.
Against.
Brunian. Porter. Raby. Scott. M.J. Skills Jr. M.J.D. Skills Senior. Steady. Stevenson. Stock. Talbot. Turner. Watson. White. Whitmore. Winfield. And Yellow.
Against.
Thank you. Chairman, if I may. The vote was 16 for the motion, 30 against the motion, 9 abstentions, 5 not present. Therefore, the motion falls.
Thank you. Item number 13, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule. Question number 1, Councillor Everett.
Thank you. Please take the question as read.
Yeah, Councillor Calver, are you okay with that? No. Thank you very much. So you're very welcome. Councillor Everett, I request you read your question.
Thank you. Is the portfolio holder aware that in the past month 2 ambulance technicians, one located at Harwich, one located in Wheeley, have died whilst in service? A local ambulance technician, Associate Practitioner Ian Carter, is currently gauging support for a 999 memorial garden for Essex to remember all police, fire and ambulance personnel that die in service. Currently, Essex does not have such a memorial garden for 999 personnel, although other counties do. Does the portfolio holder think that this council could support such a scheme?
Councillor McWilliams.
Thank you, Chairman. And I would like to thank Councillor Everett for his question, and I confirm that I am aware of these tragic deaths, and I could see no reason why the Council would not want to support such a memorial garden. As Councillor Everett will know, we do already have a memorial gardens along the seafront in Clacton. One for servicemen, which have effectively been doubled in size in
excuse me,
years.
Councillor Williams, just wait for Councillor Buke, just a moment. Please continue.
I'll take it back just a moment.
Thank you.
As Councillor Everett will know, we do already have memorial gardens along the seafront in Clacton. One for servicemen, which has effectively been doubled in size in recent years, to include smaller service-based memorials in what we call the Sunken Rose Garden. There is slightly further along, near the hospital, another garden with a memorial for P.C. Dabell, who was shot and killed a few years ago. So, yes, thank you.
Councillor Everett, do you have a response?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question number 2, Councillor Fowler to Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. The Leader of the Council will be aware of the dreadful state of the road surface, the A120 between Harwich and Horsley Cross, and the lobbying carried out by Harwich Town Council to end the delays in its resurfacing. Will he please agree to write to Highways England on behalf of Tendring District Council in order to place Tendring District Council's voice alongside that of Harwich Town Council in seeking immediate action? Thank you, Chairman.
That's not a £5 donation, was that I heard? Councillor Stock.
Just glad it wasn't mine, Chairman. Chairman, thank you. I would like to thank Councillor Fowler for her question. It's a very good question. I wrote to the Minister of State for Transport, copied to our MP. Immediately I saw this question, and I'm delighted to be able to report that work is now underway to ameliorate the terrible state of the A120 on this stretch of the road. I received an immediate reply to my emails from Bernard Jenkin, pledging to do all he could to support me and to raise the matter directly with the Minister. On Friday, Bernard had a briefing on the condition of the road from Highways England. He met on A120 with the Highways Agency Regional Director. They drove the road together and discussed exactly what's happening to this stretch of road, particularly to the Wicks bypass section. Bernard further wrote to me on this issue just yesterday evening and then phoned me to confirm that he just left a meeting at 4:30 p.m. yesterday with the Roads Minister, Jessie Norman MP, and the Chief Executive of Highways England, Jim O'Sullivan, to discuss the issue further. And I can now confirm the following. Whilst there was always going to be a programme of repair of potholes and cracks as the winter season ends, they are now planning an £800,000 2-year programme of repairs in order to sustain the safe operation of the road. That work, as I stated previously, has now started this week and will continue after the Easter weekend. with 3 crews and a significant number of shifts. This will involve cold fill of potholes, which addresses the safety risks of potholes, and spalling, which is the breaking away of small sections, apparently, and patching of sections up to 5 metres in length with new top dressing. However, this will not address the underlying deterioration of this section of the A120, which has been occurring over a long period of time. Highways England are now contemplating a much more comprehensive programme of works as a priority. This section of the A120 is some 50 years old, and some stretches were apparently built to long-term test different construction techniques and materials. Much of this section of the A120 is laid on concrete slabs which are simply reaching the end of their life. The substructure is failing. Some of them have moved, the joints between the slabs are more and more evident, particularly down the middle of the carriageway, and some gullies are collapsing. This work is regarded as imperative and will need to be addressed in the next forward programme as part of RIS2, which is Road Investment Strategy 2, which means the work will be done in the period 2020 to 2025. This project will cost many tens of millions of pounds, if not more than that. However, it's an opportunity to develop a proper A120 development strategy, which is integrated with the plans for economic development along the A120 corridor. This would involve a full traffic study to establish future traffic growth and to ensure the new road is of sufficient capacity. If we want to consider an entirely different line of route or dualling in the long term, now is the time to develop these proposals. We'd also need to address whether plans for the Barside Bay Container Terminal are likely to proceed or not, and what contribution that might lead to, if any. And furthermore, Chairman, the Government has announced this week extra funding of £2.6 million for pothole repairs in Essex, which is news I'm sure we will all welcome. In conclusion, Chairman, work is underway to address the concerns raised by Councillor Fowler. I'm grateful to her for her question. It was a positive and constructive question addressing an issue that was affecting not just ordinary road users, but also the long-term economic prosperity of the entire area.
Thank you. Councillor Fowler, do you have a supplementary? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Stock, for your reply. I'm aware that the work on that road has been long overdue, and I think most people who travel on that road are aware of that. And even just recently, when I wasn't able to drive and I was a passenger in a car, I had no idea just how bad some of those potholes really are. Well, they're not potholes. They're probably best described as craters. A pothole is a hole. These are not holes. And, of course, part of the road is also sinking now. And that road doesn't need just repairing. It needs the whole thing completely redoing, as it is 50 years old, maybe older parts. So I would ask if you would support the call for extra funding from the government for Highways England to completely rebuild the road completely for not just everyday road users, for people who live in areas and travel to Harwich, travel from Harwich back to Harwich, but also for the visitors that we have that come to the area, and many of them come from outside the United Kingdom. And what must they think when they go round the Horsley Cross roundabout and onto, as described by a paramedic recently, a farm track? That was how it was described by a paramedic recently, the A120 section between Horsley Cross and Ramsey roundabout as a farm track. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stock.
I think Councillor Fowler's being rude about farm tracks there. I've been down farm tracks which are in better condition than the A120, which is an appalling state of affairs. Yes, is the key answer to the fundamental question I think that she put there. I absolutely support more government funding and investment, and it was in the body of the text of my answer that should be happening. The A120, let us be very clear, from all the way from Hare Green to Harwich is not fit for purpose. It needs to be dualled all the way. For Harwich to get put back on the map, for Harwich to be pulled effectively closer to London and to the throbbing heart of the economic life of this country. Harwich was once a great and successful port, and it struggles a bit at the moment. It still does extremely well, I think, but it could do an awful lot better. But that road lets it down massively, and it's simply not acceptable. I absolutely support a new road. I don't support anything that slows traffic down going to and from Harwich. I don't support the new roundabout that's being constructed at Hare Green for that very reason, because it slows down all the traffic by a few minutes on every journey in and out. And there are better ways of solving the safety issues. So yes, I think it's very important that everyone comes together on this. I think it was a very good question that you put, Councillor Fowler. And literally, as soon as that came into me, I thought, yeah, I've had so many complaints, I've heard so many complaints. I'm sick of seeing Councillor Henderson's face in the paper moaning about it. He's absolutely right to do that. Sorry, I didn't mean that disrespectfully. Quite the opposite. I am sick of hearing about the A120 and how terrible it is. And it needs to be done. So hopefully we've got some short-term improvements being carried out with a long-term plan in the pipeline. Unfortunately, highways improvements in this country seem to take far, far too long, and it seems to be a generation before things get done. The A120 from Braintree to the A12 is supposed to be in the pipeline to be done, but will we all still be driving, those of us in the chamber tonight, when that road finally is open? Because to give an example of how long it takes, the A120 from Stansted to Braintree was upgraded about 10 years ago, but I was at school in Dunmow when that was announced as a route, and I remember looking at the paper and looking at the map and working out what route my school bus was going to be taking. Well, sadly, I was in my 40s when that road actually got opened. And that's how long these things take in this country, and it's really not acceptable. We need to get the bulldozers out and be charging in a new road sooner rather than later. I fully support it.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor Henderson to Councillor Stock. Your opportunity to come back about the paper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will the Leader of the Council consider commissioning an impact study into the possible effect Brexit may have on the residents and businesses living and trading within the district of Tendring?
Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Henderson, for your question. The Brexit referendum result was clear and decisive, and it puts the question of this country's membership of the UK beyond question. Indeed, no election in this country has ever seen so many people vote the same way. We are leaving the European Union. There will undoubtedly be a range of issues arising from Brexit which will impact on both Tendring as a district, neighbouring authorities and the operations of this council. As Leader of the Council, let me say that I'm extremely positive and optimistic for our post-Brexit future. There will be challenges, but there will be opportunities. The precise details and terms of our exit are still being negotiated and discussed, and on what terms and even precisely when we leave are not known at this time. So at this stage, Chairman, I think it would be premature to undertake an impact study, as the full details of Brexit are simply not yet known. I will be asking officers to start preparing a briefing note on Brexit for all members when we have more detail and the impacts can be properly assessed. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Yes, Chairman. Well, in answer to that, I would have thought, and I think many councils and other authorities, organisations are doing these impact studies to be able to assist all sorts of businesses within the Tendring district, even if we just survey them and ask them what their concerns are, so we can look at those concerns and try and deal with them. We can't, as you said, the decision's been made, we can't ignore it, but what we can do is do our best to work with those businesses to make sure the impact is as soft as possible on them if they're concerned. I just wondered if he's had any discussions with the port, because they're obviously very concerned, ports within this country, about leaving the customs union and the effects that it will have on goods being held up in ports up and down the country because of being stopped at borders.
Councillor Stock.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm looking to set a meeting up very soon, actually, with the ports, particularly at Harwich. And you're right to raise it as an issue, because we don't know what the impact is going to be. We don't know how Brexit is going to pan out. It could be that a bad thing turns out to be a good thing. It could be that because of new customs restrictions, we end up having a big industry in this district, in Harwich, of customs officers needing to be employed, checking stuff as they come in. It may be annoying for importers. It may be annoying for exporters. It may be expensive for businesses, but it could be a little boost. There are all sorts of curious positives that people are talking about. I heard someone saying that if the City of London ends up getting shifted to Paris or Frankfurt or other European countries as they try and steal that from us as a business, those sort of entrepreneurial types who work in the City of London, most of whom work in Essex, because it's the railway station, the railway line that goes straight into the heart of the City of London, of course, is the station at Liverpool Street, and it's our railway line. Many of those bankers, etc., may end up retiring back to their communities within Tendring, within Essex, and setting up businesses, being creative, innovative, and making money within this area. So it could be a bizarre sort of perverse twist there, where something bad could turn out to be good. So I'm completely supportive of what he's saying. We need to keep our eyes on what is happening, keep our finger on the pulse, and we need to keep talking to businesses. I'm actually getting some quite positive vibes from businesses in certain small manufacturing sectors who say they're experiencing upturns in trade where their customers are looking to, if you like, ensure the supply line and withdrawing from having stuff manufactured in Europe and getting it made more locally. So there are positives, there are risks, there are challenges. Some businesses will undoubtedly suffer as a result of Brexit, but I think an awful lot more will do well. I'm actually really positive and optimistic about it. I think it's going to be great for this country, and I look forward to it happening.
Thank you. Councillor J. Henderson to Councillor Skills, Senior.
Thank you, Chairman. Will the portfolio holder for leisure confirm when the closed-off lane at Dovercourt Swimming Pool will be reopened for the public to use on a permanent basis? Thank you.
Councillor Skills.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, for your question. Following some recent staff training and wanting to look at ways of following best practice guidelines, leisure staff undertook a visibility stone zone check, utilising the most up-to-date guidelines. Whilst not being a major issue, light reflection from the side nearest the windows could, under some circumstances, reduce the lifeguard's ability to monitor below the waterline as effectively as we would like. And so the decision was taken to remove that lane during the quieter periods to reduce the risk and give the lifeguard a smaller area to scan. During the busy period, 2 lifeguards are on duty, and so their scan area can be adjusted so that light refraction does not become an issue. Whilst this is a belt and braces approach, following the most recent guidelines, I would hope that you would agree that public safety must be uppermost in operational management considerations. The very low usage of the pool during these quiet sessions does not justify 2 lifeguards being on duty. There can be, on occasion, more lifeguards than users of the pool. As mentioned at a recent meeting of the Cabinet, the closure of one lane during quieter periods is a temporary approach, whilst we are in the process of looking at underwater technology to possibly use a blended lifeguarding approach. A meeting was due to take place a couple of weeks ago to consider the technical, practical and financial implications of installing this underwater technology. But due to the adverse weather, the meeting had to be cancelled, but is now in the process of being rearranged. If we are able to use this new technology, we will look to open up the pool fully again during the quiet sessions and have one lifeguard and the monitor showing the whole pool below the surface. Alternatively, we may look at restructuring sessions to ensure that we are confident we are meeting all the appropriate guidelines. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your answer. Please would you be able to confirm if Clacton and Walton swimming pools have also suffered the same cuts? Thank you.
Councillor Skills.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not aware of any cuts, so I don't think anything has been cut.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Skills. Item number 14, report of the Leader of the Council. There is no report on this occasion. Item number 15, minutes of committees, pages 17 to 50. Councillor Heaney. Stay seated if you wish.
I'm moving the minutes of the Standards Committee because I have a recommendation to Council, but I'll just read the following from the agenda. The committee was aware, the Standards Committee was aware that Tendring District Council had recently referred to the lack of sanctions in the consultation document from the DCLG on criminal orders and the eligibility to stand or remain as a councillor. Following this discussion at the committee, I move this recommendation to Council that the government be lobbied directly and via the Local Government Association for a review of the lack of sanctions available to the Standards Committee following criminal convictions of elected members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stock? I didn't see you there.
Thank you. Could I ask the Chair of Corporate Scrutiny if throughout the minutes...
Councillor Henderson, if we're dealing with Councillor Heaney, we'll deal with that first.
Well, no, and just to clarify, it was just discussing the standards minutes, Councillor Henderson, but I support the recommendation. I'm happy to put it to the vote, Chairman.
All those in favour of that recommendation? Thank you, it's carried. We now move back to the rest of the minutes. Councillor Henderson, thank you.
Sorry, I've recommendation at the end. Could I ask the Chair...
Chairman, if I may, sorry, Chairman's with permission. The minutes have got to be moved. Councillor Henderson, are you moving the minutes en bloc and want to make a statement, or are you leaving to Councillor Stock to move the minutes and then want to make a statement? Right. Thank you. Okay.
I will move all the minutes there, Chairman, as written.
Go on, Ivan.
Third time lucky. Could I ask the Chair of Corporate Scrutiny, because I can't see it in the minutes, was there ever an opportunity to scrutinise the waste and recycling contract extension at any time, and also to scrutinise the costs and financial implications regarding that? Because I can't see it anywhere in the minutes that actual extension was ever scrutinised at all. Very similar to the last motion actually we were discussing. No scrutinisation on that as well. It just seems to be now something that is repeating itself.
Councillor Stedding.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ivan, for your question. Yes, it was discussed along the lines of that the contract was up for review in 2019. It was also part of the working group, the task and finish groups, which was done, a year and a half ago. So the view was that as it was up for review in 2019, the changes to the waste and recycling to stay as it was, and obviously the wheelie bin initiative, which has been announced, was that whilst there would be no cuts in the contract, there would be no increase either. So it was actually discussed within the CMC. Whilst I'm on my feet, I would just like to say that it's already been included in the minutes of the last CMC on the 12th of March, but I would like to formally in this chamber express my thanks to the officers who over the years have supported the present and also the previous CMC. Their support has been very good, and it's made it easy for the members to carry on with their work.
Thank you, Councillor. Steady, Councillor Calder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following on from that response from Councillor Steady, we come back to a point that has been raised in the chamber before, and I have to say opposition representatives did raise with the peer review group. Are you comfortable with the situation where the results of work carried out by a committee's own task and finish group are then scrutinised by that committee? Because there does seem to be a massive conflict of interest.
Thank you, Gary, for that. Well, as you know, the corporate management is going to be amalgamated with the service delivery. So I think I'm winding down, to be quite honest with you, as opposed to my normal position of winding up. So I think probably this will be a question for the new committee, which will come into force after the AGM.
Okay, all those in favour? Thank you. Item number 17, motion to council predatory parking companies. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This council wishes to put on record its disquiet at the actions of predatory parking companies in the Tendring district and organisations that are no more than apologists for them. This council instructs officers to 1. Protest formally to the British Parking Association, BPA, about its wholly inadequate response to complaints made by this council and by an elected member regarding the actions of Smart Parking and Debt Recovery Plus relating to the Ravensdale car park in Great Clacton. 2. Resign from the British Parking Association by not renewing our membership for 2018. 3. Investigate the possibility of withdrawing from the Safer Parking scheme operated by the BPA. 4. Champion the concept of local authorities licensing private parking companies in their activities, or at least the establishment of a single, genuinely independent regulator for the private parking sector that has no connection, financial or otherwise, with the wider parking industry, as part of the suite of regulatory measures proposed as part of a private member's bill currently progressing through Parliament. 5. Research other councils in Essex and beyond experiences over predatory parking companies' activity in their locales and create a database of these experiences to help inform the committee stages of the Parking Code of Practice Bill currently progressing through Parliament.
Thank you very much. And your seconder? Councillor Bray. Thank you. Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Chairman. Further to the motion and put out before you this evening, I'd like to voice my support. We've come a long way since the days when private parking operators were content to promote levels of land for motorists to park on for an agreed and reasonable fee. In recent years, there's been an increase in the use of unscrupulous and unethical practices in this sector. Firstly, with aggressive tactics around the clamping and removal of vehicles parked on private land, and when the practice was outlawed by the previous Conservative government in Westminster, operators then turned increasingly towards high levels of penalty ticketing as a means of raising revenue. These high ticket levels are often the result of confusing regulations and poor information provided on car parks which catch motorists leaving them unawares. This is then further compounded by the unsympathetic and complicated appeal procedures, which leaves the motorists with little option but to pay or risk the fine increasing. The motion today relates to the privately operated car park in Ravensdale, Great Clacton, where it is thought that up to 500 or more motorists were issued with parking fines over a short period of time, as little as 3 weeks. The operator, Smart Parking, as opposed to considering whether these high numbers of parking penalty tickets were the result of confusing regulations and signage and therefore worthy of being rescinded, elected instead to press on vigorously with the enforcement, including the use of bailiff countries to coerce people into paying large sums of money for parking in breach of rules they were unaware of. This motion asks us as a council to resign its membership of the British Parking Association as a result of its wholly inadequate investigation into a complaint made by this council into the activities of Smart Parking, a member of the approved operator scheme. The motion seeks further support for a number of other options designed to limit the poor practice of many parking operators and to encourage other local authorities to do likewise. This council has an agreed parking strategy for this district that recognises the importance of motorists to the local economy and the aim of this district to be car friendly. The motion put forward by Councillor Everett supports the aims of this strategy and seeks to widen the debate further around the issue of motorists that are treated by many parking enforcement bodies, including some in the public sector. The Council supports sensible and appropriate parking enforcement designed to ensure safety and the reasonable turnover of parking in the areas of high demand. It does not, however, support unfair practices that serve to make quick profits for unscrupulous companies at the expense of our residents. The licensing of private parking companies, or at the very least the setting up of a new registry body independent of the parking sector, is worthy of our full support and is something we wish to urge inclusion of the current private members' bill going through Parliament on this subject. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nichols. Councillor Everett, do you wish to make a statement to your motion?
Yes, please. Colleagues in this chamber will be aware there's the continuing problem with unfair parking charges being levied to predominantly elderly, in some cases vulnerable people in Great Clacton. Members will remember a question being raised in this chamber back in September last year, which briefed councillors on the situation at the time. I'd love to be able to report that the problem had been resolved, but unfortunately I cannot. Since September, there's been activity by various agencies to help the unfortunate victims of this predatory private company, Smart Parking. This council has done its bit in terms of its planning responsibility, as well as by representing our residents' situation to the British Parking Association. I wish I could say that all agencies I've approached for help with this matter have been as helpful. One particular force I'm hugely critical of, and its total lack of any meaningful action, is the police. But that should be a debate for another day, perhaps. The agency I'm most critical of, however, is the British Parking Association, who are meant to regulate their members. When complained to about the actions of Smart Parking and their Bully Boys Debt Recovery Plus, they did nothing. In fact, they did more than nothing. They acted as apologists for Smart Parking, hardly the actions of a reputable and upstanding accredited trade association who should be regulating the private parking industry. Specifically, the BPA received a complaint from an officer of this council, Ian Taylor, a well-respected and highly regarded former vice-chair of the BPA. His complaint was at best cursory investigated, and at worst the response was misleading and a poor attempt to cover up. The questions this council asked have still not been satisfactorily answered, and the refusal by the BPA to pursue Smart Parking, particularly over how many tickets were issued, is indicative of an attempt by Smart Parking and the BPA to cover up the issue. Further, the biased way in which the investigation was conducted, with no motorists being approached for comment, again indicates that the BPA is not a fit and proper organisation to self-regulate the private parking industry. A further complaint by myself sought to ensure that the activities of Debt Recovery Plus were investigated by the BPA. Regulation of the debt recovery process is legitimately in the purview of the BPA. Indeed, the debt recovery agencies involved in this saga, DRP, are members of the BPA, and their website and letters to my residents document this. Further, this membership is used by them as a fig leaf to legitimise themselves, quoted in the intimidating and harassing letters to victims of this scam. But the BPA do not have any oversight or sway over them, confirmed in a response to my complaint. Specifically, the BPA, and I quote here from their letter, Code of Practice does not specially cover the working practice of debt recovery agents. Its focus is for parking operators practising parking enforcement. In short, the principle of an ATA, the body meant to be overseeing the self-regulation of private parking, has not worked, and the British Parking Association have been shown to be wholly inadequate in regulating themselves, or indeed the parking companies or debt recovery firms involved. They seem more interested in their commercial activity to the detriment of the public role they should be playing. Unfortunately, this council is a voluntary member of the British Parking Association. Now, it's a requirement for private parking operators to be members of an ATA to be able to get access to DVLA records. Thankfully, there's no such obligation on local authorities, so our membership is not needed to be able to run our car parks. In addition, I do not think that it's appropriate that we spend council taxpayers' hard-earned money to belong to a body that is so inept. In fact, I think that money could be better used. To quote Ian Taylor, in a response to the BPA following their downright incompetent investigation of smart parking and subsequent obfuscation, he said, "I feel the BPA has run its course as a credible body for dealing with these kinds of disputes, and the not inconsiderable expense may be better spent on supporting motorists in the district." Further to that membership, we also spend a considerable amount of money to the BPA to be part of their safer parking scheme. I think it's about time we reviewed whether, in this tight financial climate, this is a legitimate use of council taxpayers' money. One area I have good news about, however, is the Private Members Bill currently proceeding through Parliament. The Parking Code of Practice Bill received its second reading on Friday the 2nd of February, and Councillor Bray and myself were in Parliament to watch it progress. Our fellow TDC councillor and MP, Giles Watling, made a good contribution to the debate, denouncing smart parking, saying, "In my view, that is an outrageous scam. Rogue practices demonstrated by companies like Smart Parking needs to be stopped." Talking about private companies generally, Kevin Foster, MP for Torbay, said, "It's like putting Dracula in charge down at the blood bank." Pete Wishart, MP for Perth, talking about smart parking, described them as the John Wayne of parking cowboys and referred to the British Parking Association. He drew the parallel of them being as much use as a multi-storey car park in the Gobi Desert. So I'm here today to urge members to support the motion to Council regarding smart parking, DRP and the BPA.
Thank you very much. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chairman. As ward member for St John's Ward, I have quite a few of my residents fallen foul to the practices of the said car park. So I fully support Councillor Everett. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton.
Well, I agree mostly what you're saying. How will this affect the parking area around the hospital as they use the money that is gathered to actually, build the roads around it? And if you take that away from them, you're probably going to that money is probably going to come out of their budget. Now we also have, where I work, we also have a parking eye. There's also one at the co-op which works very well. I think we really need to think about this before we actually start putting this as a motion. Thank you.
Councillor Gugliani.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully welcome this motion. It's long overdue, and I think some drastic action here is needed to make the British Parking Association take notice that this predatory, and I do love that term, predatory company, are making the life a misery of so many residents, which they are forced sometimes to park in places other than our own car parks, and they're just there for the takings. This was as far back as when I had responsibility for parking back in 2010. It was a problem that all MPs agreed that had to be dealt with, but has never ever been tackled up until now. I think we have a very good ambassador now with our MP who's fully supportive of the bill that's going through Parliament at the moment. But it's high time that drastic action is needed from this council to make the British Parking Association take notice of what the problem is and get to grips with it. So I shall be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the ward councillors bordering the car park in question, I've experienced so many letters and everything else. And I just wanted to let the members know that when we talk about 500 fines, this wasn't to 500 individuals. This practice, what basically happened was they put an MPCR camera in it, an NPR camera in, and they didn't bother issuing a single fine for 3 weeks. Then they issued them all. So people had been using that to go to the local gym for up to 3 weeks without knowing that they were getting fined. Some people received 12 fines of £60 a throw. And if you didn't pay them within 5 days, they were going to take up to £120. And some people found themselves well over £1,000 in debt for just not knowing. And the only recourse they had on this was, you didn't put your number plate in. The signage on that was so small that when they were investigated by the BPA, that signage mysteriously disappeared just before that investigation took part. And then they were cited by the BPA as no signage being in place. So when I talk about this, I am fully in support of Councillor Everett, and I just wish to thank, in a rare moment, Councillor Everett for all of his hard work in this and how he's helped my residents in particular in making this a very, very good motion. Thank you very much.
Councillor Everett, without any reference further to John Wayne, would you like to sum up quickly, please?
Thank you very much, everybody, for the support that you've shown in the Chamber tonight. I'm sure that the residents involved within this appalling situation will be very, very thankful of the support that has been received from this Council, and I thank you all very much. Thank you.
All those in favour? There. Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's carried. Item number 18, motion to Council Highways Repairs Arrangements. Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you, Chair.
Chairman.
Sorry. It's on you, you know what I'm like. If this Council could request that Essex County Council consider extending the arrangement currently in place by Highways Ranger to cover minor repairs such as potholes, broken curbs, cleaning out the roadside drains, channels, removing repairs to barriers and signage, to enable a quick response to local issues such as to make a district council level rather than a local highways panel, which is presented only as an advisory board for the county council portfolio holder. We could even set up our own committee for this. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton, do you have a seconder? Thank you. Do you wish to make a statement to your motion? The stock. Microphone, Councillor Pemberton.
Right, that's better. Thank you, Chairman. I want to move an amendment, Chairman, which I apologise in advance to all members, and particularly to you, Chairman, that I haven't written down in lots of little slips of paper. I've only scribbled it out whilst I've been sitting here. I have a great deal of sympathy for what Councillor Pemberton seeks to achieve here. I think we can improve his motion, is what I'm seeking to do. And because, not least because, and Councillor Pemberton wouldn't know this, but there's already a dialogue going on between Essex and us about what powers we might have, what powers would we like devolved from Essex to Tendring. My instinctive answer to that question was parking and highways, because they are two of the things that Essex does that I think could be done better at a more local level. But obviously only if we have the proper budgets and funding in place to do it. So the amendment, Chairman, that I seek to move is to, this isn't the best wording, but it will work. If we delete all the words up to and including considers from the first line and replaces with the words, this Council requests that the Leader of the Council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to extending the arrangements currently in place. Everything else continues, and then I'll delete the last line and put, whilst ensuring that any powers devolved come with full funding. Because what I don't want is for us to get lumbered with mending all the potholes, which I'm sure Essex would love to get rid of, and all the funding sort of runs out after 12 months and we're responsible for it, but we haven't got any money to actually do anything about it. I think there's loads of little minor issues there. You talked about small potholes could be done by the highways rangers, but I don't want to get in a situation where we've got teams of officers from Essex and officers from Tendring going out measuring potholes to determine whether they're small potholes or big potholes. I just want the potholes mended as quickly as possible, as I'm sure we all do. So that's the amendment I'd like to move, Chairman, and if Councillor Pemberton wishes to accept that, then I'm quite happy.
Thank you very much. Councillor Pemberton, do you accept it, first of all, before I go any further?
Aye, can you just repeat what you said? So
Yeah, we were going to ask you to do that anyway, because we didn't quite get it here, so thank you.
I know how difficult it is to follow these changes, so I apologise, and particularly to Councillor Calver. So if I read to you what would be the substantive motion if this is agreed, and it would be that this council requests that the Leader of the Council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to extending the arrangements currently in place with the highways rangers to cover minor highways repairs such as smaller potholes, broken slabs, curbs, cleaning out roadside drainage channels and removals, repairs to barriers and signage.
Councillor Stott, I'm sorry, but you're so fast.
Sorry, that bit's just straight from the text.
Right.
Sorry.
I'm going to have to ask you to start again, I'm sorry.
Sorry. Right, this is punishment. This council requests that the Leader of the Council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to, and then back to the text of Councillor Pemberton's original wording, with a view to extending the arrangements currently in place with the highways rangers to cover minor highways repairs such as smaller potholes, broken slabs, stroke curbs, cleaning out roadside drainage channels, and removals, stroke repairs to barriers and signage to enable a quicker response to local issues. Such decisions should be made at district council level rather than the local highways panel, which at present is only an advisory board for the county council portfolio holder, comma, whilst ensuring that any powers devolved come with full funding. I don't pretend that that's the sort of the tidiest of wording, but I think it's clear what is intended, or I hope it is clear.
Thank you for that. Just give us a moment, please. Councillor Porter, as the seconder of the original motion, do you also accept the alterations? You do, thank you. So that is now the substantive motion. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be interested to see the results of this vote, because this was put as a motion by the Labour group at Essex County level to actually refer all local maintenance back to district councils. And Conservative county councillors voted against that. They didn't want that to happen. I'm really pleased that they've now had this conversion to actually supporting us having more local control over maintenance. I will support this, but I am really concerned when I support this, because I've sat today in a corporate management committee at Essex County Council. I know how their funds are going to be squeezed by the government between 20 and 21, and how much more savings they've got to make. And I think I am concerned that anything we took over at this time, before the business rate retention schemes are in place, would actually put a lot of pressure on this local council, because there is no way that we're going to get the right funding from Essex County Council, because they haven't got the funds to actually pass on at the moment. So I think this is probably not the right time to go down this route. I don't think they've got the money to actually pass over. Nobody knows what the local government finance is going to look like at the moment till after 2021, when that business rate retention comes in. There's a massive hole at the moment in local government funds. And there's a big concern, because government are not telling local authorities what the future beholds to them. They're looking at fair funding at the moment. We don't even know what the result of that is. The consultation has only just closed this month. So I think I do support it. We've supported that for a long time, that local district councils should have more responsibility over these minor maintenance contracts, but I'm concerned that at the moment we, as a district council, by Essex County Council, will be squeezed, and we'll end up putting various pressures on other services that we're trying to deliver around this council, because they will not give us the adequate funding that we actually need.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a little bit of clarification, please. I sit on the local highways panel, and it's just the way the wording is on here. Currently, the local highway panel is not responsible for any of that, and if you can read it one of two ways. And the way you read this, I can read it that the local highway panel, the argument would just be we're not responsible for that, and it'll defeat any purpose. So I was just wondering if we could tweak the wording around the local highway panel to reflect that we've established that the local highway panel is currently not responsible for that. I read it a different way, that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is an excellent motion, and I think the one thing that was missing were the issues surrounding funding. And I agree with Councillor Henderson, there is a massive hole in public service budgets at the moment. There are also several massive holes in our roads, and anything we can do to correct or help that has got to be a good idea. I'm very happy to support that. I think, and I'm sure that was simply because the amendment was, shall we say, dictated rather quickly. So I'm sure it will be put right. I think it's an excellent motion. I'm more than happy to support it. I hope everybody else will. And hopefully the funds will be found, because we can't do it without them.
Yeah, Chairman, I'm going to be really, really annoying now. And I've never... But this is Councillor Stevenson's fault, because I think he made a good point, actually, that it wasn't... So I'm going to move another amendment. Councillor Pemberton, get your ears pricked. I'm going to try and make it simpler, actually, much more simple. So, and delete a lot of the text within the original motion and in my changed substantive motion. So I'm going to propose that the amendment reads as follows. This council requests that the leader of the council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to devolving highways powers to Tendring District Council. Highways powers, plural, to Tendring District Council, comma, whilst ensuring that any powers devolved come with full funding. So I've been completely broad there, because you're right, the local highways panel and potholes and maintenance, two separate things. We hear it all the time. We're not responsible for that. We're not responsible for that. So I'm just saying highways powers. Yeah? There's obviously going to be discussion. You know, Councillor Henderson was quite cynical about whether it's going to happen. So am I. You know, but I think it's worth a conversation, and I think the best way of trying to get it to happen is for me to go up there, backed up by a motion from this council, supporting me, telling me to do it, and ensuring that any powers that we get come with the full funding. So if Councillors Porter and Pemberton are happy to, I'm happy to read that again. Okay, Ian's nodding. So again, and I really do apologise for this, I'm proposing that the motion read that this council requests that the leader of the council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to devolving highways powers to Tendring District Council, whilst ensuring that any powers devolved come with full funding.
Councillor Stock, we're just going to read back to you what we believe we've got down and clarify, and then we'll move on with everybody else.
Thank you for that, if I may. I obviously don't write fast enough. This council, as I understand it's where we've got to in terms of this is coming from the revised substantive motion with this amendment now. This council requests the leader of the council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to devolving highways powers to Tendring District Council, whilst ensuring any powers devolved comes with full funding.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson, you okay with that?
No, it's Councillor Pemberton.
Councillor Pemberton, first of all, you okay with that?
The only thing I'm worried about, it negates the actual original motion. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
Well, it's a substantive motion at the moment, so we'll see what happens. Councillor Calver.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Am I on?
Yeah.
I absolutely support the principle of this, and I certainly will support the motion. But I do feel I've got to use the words, be careful what you wish for. I've got a horrible feeling that Essex County Council might jump at the chance, under the present budgetary arrangements, to get rid of this, and actually we end up with a poisoned chalice that we simply can't fund. Now, I absolutely accept that this motion is to continue discussions. There's nothing more substantive than that. But in the spirit of the motion, which is an excellent motion, can we have an assurance from the leader, please, that any final agreement that is finalised is given full council scrutiny and is subject to debate and vote in this chamber before it comes to fruition. Thank you, Chairman.
If I may respond to that, Chairman, because Councillor Calver makes a really excellent point. I completely agree with you, Councillor Calver. You're absolutely right. I started to express that concern in the beginning about having a load of horrible responsibilities dumped on us that people are very unhappy about, i.e. potholes and the terrible state of our roads. At the moment, we can blame Essex for that, and it's quite nice. But if that's Tendring District Council's responsibility and we haven't got the money to do it because we didn't get a very good deal, we are going to be in terrible trouble. So, absolutely, I would want to bring back, this is just for discussions. This isn't to sign up to anything. And any report, any proposal that we actually do this would have to come back. I give you my word that it would come back to this council chamber for full debate, full discussion and a full vote.
Chairman, if I may, in addition to what Councillor Stock said, that in order for this council to accept powers, it would be required to come back and with those terms. So you would actually, this does not empower the leader or the council to just take those powers. It would still have to come back and be accepted, as Councillor Stock said. I think it's Councillor Pemberton you want to go to.
Yep. Councillor Pemberton, are you happy with the substantive motion? The amended motion? You are? Okay, and your seconder, Councillor Porter? As the seconder of the original motion?
No, because I do think that it completely negates the original and the substantive motion before it was amended, and it is now got no similarity to the previous substantive motion. So it's a point of procedure, and it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, so there isn't, and it doesn't actually negate it because it doesn't go against it. It's just different.
Well, if it doesn't, it's completely different to the original motion, so it negates it. You can add or remove words, but now it's completely different to what it was in the first place. It's talking about devolved powers and funding. It's got nothing to do with this motion or the amended motion, which became a substantive motion. So
if you're not accepting, then we'll have to vote on the amendment. We'll go back to the debate, I think, first, because there's a couple more people yet to speak. Yeah, so we're talking on the amendment, and I've got Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Fully support this motion. Love to see it. The only worrying wording is the full funding. The Highways Panel, their whole funding for the whole of Tendring is only £395,000. And when you look at the state of the roads in the town, in Clacton and many others, they need completely resurfacing before we would even take any of this on. But nevertheless, as it is, I will support the motion and happy to, but very worried about the full funding that you get from Essex County.
Thank you. Councillor Buke.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not quite sure in my own mind whether the devolution of powers from county highways to us to do the work would achieve anything other than to complain to somebody else that they're not being done. But can the Chief Executive or somebody else remind me what the arrangement was before, when Tendring Council had either an agency or a contract, I can't remember which, or a licence to undertake highways maintenance and repairs, and how different this might be from that?
Councillor Stock.
Yeah, Chairman, certainly in response to Councillor Buke's point, all that this motion is doing is starting a dialogue and a conversation. And if Essex come back with a proposal that isn't acceptable to me initially, it won't even come to Council. And if it's not acceptable to full Council when I do bring a proposal, it won't happen. There are lots of concerns. Councillor Calver expressed them better than I could. He's absolutely right to express them. But if we get the funding, the correct amount of funding with the correct powers, it could be something different and it could possibly work. I have my doubts whether we'll be able to put anything off. All we're agreeing today, if we agree this amendment, is for me to have discussions with Essex County Council about this idea, and then to come back to this council with any substantive ideas and decisions before they're taken. So. It might not work. I think it's probably likely that it won't work. But if Essex are willing to do something different and interesting, then who knows?
Great. Okay. So we're going to take it to the vote. We're voting on the amendment of of Councillor Stock. So all those in favour, please. Okay. Thank you. And any against? And it's carried. Thank you. So we're now going to vote on the substantive motion. All those in favour? We can read it out for you. We have voted on it, but we'll read it for you.
You're just testing on reading my own writing, aren't you? The substantive motion, which was this is now the substantive motion which you're voting on. This council requests that the Leader of the Council continues his discussions with Essex County Council with a view to devolving highways powers to Tendring District Council, whilst ensuring any powers devolved comes with full funding.
Okay, so I'll ask members for a show of hands again on that. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much. Item number 19. Councillor Calver. Please remain seated.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With your permission, Councillor Henderson will read my motion out for me.
Thank you.
Chairman, that Council resolves that Article 2 of the Council's Constitution, members of the Council, be amended to include an additional paragraph, 2.06, attendance. It is a requirement that a member does not exceed 6 months without attending a meeting of the Council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the Council, either as an appointed member of a committee/subcommittee or as a substitute member of a committee/subcommittee.
Thank you. Councillor Calver, do you wish to make a statement to that? Sorry, do you have a seconder?
I second that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Calver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I make it clear straight away that this motion is not an attempt to provide a vehicle to remove councillors from this council. The monitoring officer has already made it clear that the legislation does not allow that, and that this motion would only affect our constitution and would not supersede the legislation. I believe what we have at the present is quite simply a farcical situation that has been made apparent by recent experience, and that I believe brings this council really into public disrepute, in that we could have a situation where a member of this council could actually simply witness the business of this council for 4 years and not take any part in any decision taken by the council, and yet remain a councillor. Now, I don't believe that is in any of our interests. I think, let's face it, the majority of members wish to be in there, being part of the decisions, making a difference, and we also accept that there are occasions when members cannot attend. We have had a situation comparatively recently when it was brought to this chamber, and I think with unanimous agreement we actually voted through an extension period because it was a very difficult and sad situation and nobody wished to take advantage of it. So quite simply, this motion is intended to, in effect, prevent what the Labour group believes is bringing the council into disrepute, and that someone can actually do nothing more than sit in the public gallery and yet be deemed to have fully participated, or shall we say, participated to an acceptable standard in the business of the council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chairman. I was surprised to see this motion on our agenda today. The reason why was because I was confused, because it's all laid down by statute. It's not in our remit to change. Our current attendance rules do not stipulate that councillors need to be members or substitutes of any particular committee or subcommittee. Indeed, the rules are clear that councillors can attend any meeting of the council. It doesn't say they need to be a member of a particular committee or subcommittee to qualify their attendance in any 6-month period. All of this was confirmed to us by the monitoring officer in her advice sent last week. Notwithstanding that, our own constitution says that all members are entitled to attend any committee or subcommittee as defined in Procedure Rule 35.1. This in itself would somewhat blur Councillor Calver's motion and its apparent intent. I contend that this motion is therefore ill thought through and should instead reflect the legal situation as set down by statute and not interpreted in any other way. In fact, I question why this motion is with us even before us today. It's not for us to interpret the will of Parliament. We've already said that. That's for the courts. Before the monitoring officer sent her advice last week, I posed the question, why was this in front of us? And surmised that the Labour Party, or should we refer to you as Momentum these days, are attempting to make cheap political points out of this situation. The monitoring officer has clearly demonstrated in her advice that this motion, if passed, would be no more than a proposed addition to the Council's rules and could not result in councillors vacating office if they transgressed, making the motion pretty pointless, really. It's also notable that a perusal of other councils' constitutions shows that very few councils indeed stray into this area. Of those that do, it is clear that, with one exception I've found, South Norfolk, they parrot the legislative position. They do not make up their own rules. I think there's a good reason for that to do so could result in challenges in the courts if those rules were interpreted as creating vacation of office. In fact, it'd be arguable that any rules made up by us, as in this case, would be pretty well unenforceable. I will therefore be voting against this motion as sufficient provision is already made by statute, and this motion only serves to add complexity and cost unnecessarily, fairly typical of Labour/Momentum and its brethren. And finally, as the Momentum leadership opposite, now arguably the official opposition leadership in this case.
Councillor Everett, I'd ask you to back off on that. Thank you. You either refer them to the Labour group or as councillors of this council. Thank you.
Councillors of this council have chosen to make a party political issue out of this. Then all I can say is this: those in greenhouses shouldn't throw stones. Many of the defences for non-attendance made by councillors in this council are indeed replicated by other councillors across the country in the last few years. I name a few over the past 5 or so. Although he's not vacated his office, Councillor Marcus Gehring in Cambridge City Council has recently been blasted locally for his non-attendance. He's an international climate change lawyer, taking him out of the country for much of the time. Councillor Amanda Stubley, Kirklees Council, was thrown off the council for not attending for 6 months. Councillor Joy Capstick, Northampton Borough Council, expelled from the council after 6 months non-attendance. Councillor Azhar Qureshi, Slough Borough Council, sacked for non-attendance. With the exception of Councillor Gehring, a Liberal Democrat, all these
Councillor
individuals
Everett, can we stick with matters
or
of
more
tendering,
accurately
Councillor,
were
please?
Labour councillors.
Councillor Porter.
Yeah, I actually agree with this motion because it does seem fairly ridiculous that councillors can not attend meetings properly and just come and watch one. And, you know, however, there is an issue I do have with it, and that is if you're elected as an independent councillor and you're not part of a group, you can't be part of a committee. So it does leave somebody in that position with the possibility that they may have a very long stretch with no meeting, so it could cause them a problem. That's it. That's my 2 points.
Thank you. Councillor Talbot.
Councillor Bray. Councillor Stone. Just a comment, Chairman. I think most of us know Gary Calver don't put forward nonsense motions. Quite frankly, it is absent from our constitution, a reference to this. It's all very well to say, well, whatever reference we put in can't deny a member his rights under law. But how many of you know where it comes from? Lisa put round a very good notice so that members knew what the position was. She refers, in fact, to the fact that for the first time ever, a councillor's duties were described in the 1972 LGA, which most of us know was the one that introduced members' allowances. And that's what it's known for, but it did describe the role of a councillor. And it did say there, whatever Gary's motion says, we can't leave this bit out, that not only must a member attend a meeting, a subcommittee, a working party or something like that within 6 months, but if you take the case, and one that sticks in my mind, Councillor Bill Bleakley, who was on the council from Harwich for a number of years, he was able at least to maintain his membership while he was seriously ill because he took advantage of the clause which is in the law but doesn't happen to be in Gary's motion that says unless the member has submitted a reason for his absence that's acceptable to the council. Now, Bill Bleakley, as I was talking about, was seriously ill, and of course, as most of us know, he did in the end, unfortunately, die of his illness. But he didn't die as an expelled member of the council. He died as a member whose absence had been accepted because of, in that particular case, his illness. It can be desperate family circumstances that have kept a member away from attending meetings, and that provision, which is in the law, should be somewhere in Gary's motion or added to it, just to say unless the member has an excuse, a reason for non-attendance that's been accepted by the council. But other than that, it's completely missing from our constitution, and why not actually describing it, the role of a member, and copying from the Act the important parts as Gary has. I think the motion is useful, will be good in the constitution, but I do genuinely think, Gary, that it should refer to the fact that an acceptable excuse is also a reason for not expelling somebody. I don't know whether I'm closer to that particular time than most or not, but at least you don't leave the council under the stain of having been expelled. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. I read this motion and I confess I was initially disappointed, so I read it again, and then I was disappointed again. It felt to me, given the current circumstances, I think everybody in the chamber knows why this motion has been brought forward at this time. It felt somewhat like political point scoring, and I might be wrong with that, but it did feel that way. As Councillor Everett has described in some detail, Section 85, the Localism Act, already covers this, so we have a legal position, which is that councillors must attend a meeting every 6 months in order to keep their seat. It doesn't require them, and actually specifically doesn't require them, to take part in that meeting as either a member or substitute member. It's interesting because Section 85, of course, was introduced or certainly amended, I believe, in 2008 by the then Labour government. So it seems to have been okay then. Also, the other thing that concerns me, and I'm on dicey ground here because I might be slightly incorrect, but I'm sure the legal officer will correct me if I am. There is also the Equality Act 2010, which makes special provision with people who have particular long-term illnesses, i.e. cancer, HIV, multiple sclerosis. And I appreciate these are not problems at the moment, but potentially any one of those could be in the future. And I suspect if we make this amendment and it's used, we pass this motion and the new form is used, we may perhaps leave ourselves open to challenge. We certainly could do. The other thing that I find slightly disconcerting is the deep concentration on attendance or participation of meetings. Now, there are 60 councillors here, and I'm sure we're all very different in what we do. I attend meetings, most people attend meetings, we all do, but we do a heck of a lot more than that. And I think to suggest that, and this motion does sort of imply that meetings are the be-all and end-all, somewhat devalues the rest of the things that councillors do. 70% of my workload, perhaps more, does not take place in this or any other chamber. It takes place out there, where the constituents are. And I think that's as valuable, and perhaps more valuable, than any meeting a councillor might attend. So that concerns me. And finally, I spent many, many years as a shop steward, defending people who had been off work for a long period of time, for a multitude of reasons, sometimes illness, but sometimes other things. I can remember a case where a gentleman who'd lost his wife was off work for 3 or 4 months. As he became ready to come back, his daughter was killed in a car accident. He was off for longer. And strangely, because the rules within the company that I was shop steward at didn't permit him to be off for a longer period of time, I had to fight really, really hard. I wouldn't want councillors to be in this position. I also wouldn't want council employees to be in this position. And what I see here potentially long-term, and certainly not in this motion, I accept that. But once you start a particular way of doing things, it tends to spread. And I'm concerned that that would move to employees. And summing up, Chairman, I see this motion as politically motivated a little bit. There is a situation going on at the moment which some members may choose to try and make some political mileage from. And I think that's a shame. I'd like to think most of us councillors are actually a little bit better than that. So the legal provision already exists to ensure that councillors do what they're supposed to do. We do not have the power to overrule the law, so I suggest we stop trying. I also suggest that we concentrate perhaps more on representing the people of Tendring and less on trying to score some political brownie points. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stock.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to take the charitable view that Councillor Calver isn't attempting to score some cheap political point, as has been alleged. And having listened to Councillor Talbot, when he says something might be needed in the Constitution, my ears do tend to prick up, and I do tend to listen. So I'm going to propose an amendment to Councillor Calver's motion, because actually, when you think about it, if the legislation says that if you don't attend a meeting, either sitting as a member of the committee or simply in the audience for 5 minutes, signing in the book and then going home again, in a 6-month period, you're automatically disqualified for office. As a council, I would have thought that the lesser sort of thing that we want to sort of have as a council would be quite a lot lower than 6 months, given that you're going to get disqualified anyway. And given that that would actually prejudice against those who are not in political groups, as we've just had a member tonight join those ranks, who cannot be a member of a committee or subcommittee, can only attend full council. And it has happened on full councils where they don't have as many council meetings as we do. I think it was on Colchester where a member who wasn't on any committees because he had a very busy job in the city, full council didn't meet for 7 months, he lost his seat. I'm going to propose, Chairman, an amendment. So apologise that I'm doing this again because I hadn't planned to do this. I was just going to vote against it, to be honest, but I can see some merit in having something in the Constitution so that for the avoidance of doubt. And there's precedent for this because we have in the Constitution a rule that if a member misses 3 consecutive meetings of a committee of which he or she is a member, that fact is reported to council. And that does act as a bit of a brake on a lazy councillor. If they don't have a genuine reason, they're not going to likely do that, I don't think. So my amendment would be thus. It is a requirement that if a member exceeds 4 months without attending any meeting of the council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the council, that information should be reported to the next full council meeting. I think that's quite reasonable. There will, in most circumstances where that happens, I dare say there will be a perfectly good and valid explanation. Councillor Tolbert talked about Bill Bleakley. That's the first time I recall as a member of this authority when we had to vote on a member who'd been absent for 6 months. There have been far too many instances since, I have to say, and to be fair to this chamber, we have always done the right thing and allowed that person the time needed to recuperate and get better. But I think that this amendment I'm proposing, I think it ticks the box that Councillor Calver wants ticked. I think it's quite reasonable, and it makes it clear in our constitution that we do have an expectation of attendance.
Thank you. Thank you. Can we just check exactly what that is? Is that it is a requirement that a member does not exceed 4 months without attending a meeting of the council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the council, either as an appointed member or of a committee, subcommittee, or as a substitute member of a subcommittee, and that shall be reported to the next meeting of the council, next council meeting.
Councillor Calver, will you accept the amendment? We'll read it for you again. No trouble.
Okay. The amendment, as I understand it, is, and Councillor Stock can advise if this is incorrect, that Council resolves that Article 2 of the Council's Constitution, members of the Council, be amended to include, as an additional paragraph, 2.06 attendance. It is a requirement that a member does not exceed 4 months without attending a meeting of the Council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the Council, either as an appointed member of a committee, subcommittee, or as a substitute member of a committee or subcommittee, and that shall be reported to the next Council meeting.
Just for clarity, it was if a member exceeds 4 months.
Sorry.
It should be reported, which is slightly different from saying that he shouldn't exceed 4 months. It's simply saying that if he does exceed 4 months. So there is a difference there for Councillor Calver to consider.
Councillor Calver? So including annual council 8 times a year.
The point I'm actually seeking a clarification on, because I'm perfectly happy with that, but I wouldn't want a situation where if a councillor missed a full council meeting and then the committee that he sat on was cancelled through lack of business, he could actually end up by only really having missed one meeting he was due to attend being reported to the council. It's just the timing on.
Councillor Calver, just picking up on the point you've raised. If not picking up on the council meeting, because they are roughly 8 times a year, but if a meeting was cancelled because there was no business, then that meeting hasn't taken place. So, because it says without attending a meeting or etc., either as an appointed member of a committee or subcommittee. So I think you'd have to have the fact that the meetings had taken place within that period for the 4 months to kick in. Do you see? Do you see what I mean? Is that if a meeting had been cancelled because of lack of business, the council has not failed to attend the meeting, have they? So you might want to do looking at maybe more. Would it? I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm hearing from the floor that you might want to consider wording such as consecutive meetings, maybe a number of meetings rather than a period.
Members, just give us a moment while we work out that up here. Thank you. Okay, members, thank you. So, Councillor Calvert, are you happy with the amendment that's been made to your amendment? Thank you. And Councillor Henderson, you happy as a seconder?
Yes, but I want the right to read.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll take that to the vote then.
Do you want to know?
Chairman, can we have it read back what we're actually voting on now? Please.
So this is at this stage. This is becoming the substantive motion, which is the motion, this is revising the original substantive motion, which is becoming the substantive motion because Councillor Calver and Councillor Henderson have agreed to accept it, which is that Council resolves that Article 2 of the Council's Constitution, members of the Council, be amended to include as an additional paragraph 2.06 attendance. It is a requirement that if a member does not exceed 4 months without attending a meeting of the Council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the Council, either as an appointed member of a committee or subcommittee or as a substitute member of a committee, subcommittee, that shall be reported to the next Council meeting. Does exceed.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Does.
If a member exceeds.
It is a I've read out more tonight than I've ever read in the whole council.
So if a member exceeds 4 months.
Member does exceed 4 months. Or exceeds.
If a member exceeds.
If a member, let me start again. Sorry, members. It is a requirement that if a member exceeds 4 months without attending a meeting of the Council or attending a meeting of a committee or subcommittee of the Council, either as an appointed member of a committee or subcommittee or as a substitute member of a committee or subcommittee, that shall be reported to the next Council meeting.
Right. Councillor Buke.
Chairman, can I just ask for clarification as to whether weather conditions, which prevent somebody getting to a meeting, would be affected? And indeed, if a member was substituted, would the member who made the substitution be classed as not attending or attending?
That is the motion before you. How you interpret it, there you are.
So the weather's not an issue.
Councillor Henderson.
I think the most sensible thing would have been, Chair, is to do what we do at Essex County Council. I sit on the Constitutional Working Party and we could have referred this issue to a Constitutional working party to come up with a form of words that we could possibly suit a cross-party decision. Because I've got to say, having sat through those ridiculous and silly attacks by some members opposite, to be accused that we on this side are politically point scoring when we're actually talking about something what affects ourselves as well, any member in this chamber. How ridiculous of an accusation to say. Perhaps recent events have brought that to attention. But as a leader on Essex County Council, I had the same concerns with one or two of my members during the last session of Essex County Council. As a leader, one member was fairly ill and had problems, another wasn't. And we had to keep continually bringing that member in as a substitute, not as sitting in attendance as an observer, as a substitute. Now, as a leader, I would expect my members to take their responsibility very seriously and do what they should do, and that's to attend their committee meetings or this council. That's a leader, I think, leader's responsibility to his group. So there was no political point scoring there. And I certainly won't, Chair, I certainly will not take any lectures from a person who was elected in one colour and jumped to another and then told us at one time that he would never vote for a Conservative budget, and then the following year he did. I mean, what hypocritical comments can anyone make as councillor?
Okay, let's get back to the motion. Otherwise, we're going to be here. Come on, Chairman.
Chairman, what
Thank
the local act, we've all read the local act, we can all try and be clever, but what the local act says is a member. It doesn't say whether you are attending as a member of that committee, it says you are attending as a member. And that's the clouded issue that eventually needs a challenge. But there's no reason why this council couldn't have made our own constitutional view of that act of saying a member of that committee or a substitute member to that committee, rather than someone sit at the back of a room as an observer for possibly a few minutes. That is a mockery. And I don't care if it's my party, the Tory party, the UKIP party or anyone else. It's a mockery. And to actually try and justify it, Councillor Everett, I think...
Okay, let's stick with the motion, otherwise I'll cut you off, Councillor Henderson.
Ground. I think he'll have a problem finding out which rosette he's going to wear.
Councillor Henderson.
Chairman, we brought this here in all good intentions for every member and to actually uphold the responsibilities of councillors in this chamber. And we certainly didn't expect to be accused of scoring political points. It's a nonsense. So I hope members will look at this as a positive move, putting the right responsibilities on all councillors to do what they should do. But at the end of the day, we're getting responsibility allowances and attendance allowances, and we should actually make sure that we justify those to the members of the public out there and not take advantage of that situation. So I hope everyone will support this motion. But I would say, Chairman, it would have been a better idea to actually for us to sit round the table in a constitutional working party to actually get this right.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a bit disappointing hearing the language across the floor, considering we're talking about members' attendance and our own conduct, to hear such language from both sides. And it also disappoints me about the length of time spending on this. Councillor Henderson has brought up an excellent point that we should have a working party, or whatever it is called, that we discuss this. And I would ask both the people who made the motion and the people who amend it if that we could not move this as an alternative option. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be supporting this motion, not least because I think any member of the public, our public, seeing this motion would think it eminently reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Calvert, do you wish to close? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chairman, and may I thank you for your protection during the debate.
That's equal across the floor, Councillor Calvert.
Yeah. May I say that I apologise that my motion has required this length of time to come to a well, we'll see if it's come to a consensus. It probably hasn't, actually. But may I also say that I appreciate the cross-party support in bringing this to a format which it now believes can be voted on, both from the leader of the council, who is obviously Conservative, and the leader of the independent group. I believe that what we've ended up with is an exceptional form of words that just, shall we say, will hopefully, as Neil said, make members think a little bit about the manner in which their actions can be perceived by the wider public, and that watching the business of the council is not the same as taking part in it as an elected member. And that was the reason for this motion. As Ivan has said, it affects equally every member of this council, and it affects the good name of this council. I'm disappointed in the tone of some of the speeches.
Yeah.
Obviously I would be. I have to say I'm sure there are those on the other side of the chamber who are equally disappointed in those speeches. But I would ask now that everybody supports a substantive motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Members, take to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? Carried. Thank you. Item number 20, recommendations from Cabinet. Councillor Guglielmi.
This will probably be the shortest speech ever, sir. I move the recommendation that the annual Treasury strategy is adopted as printed.
So take this to the vote, members. All those in favour? Any against? Carried, thank you. Item number 21, there are none on this occasion. Item number 22, report of the Head of Governance and Legal Services A1, Councillor Honeywood.
Hello, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move it as written, please.
Hello to you
Happy
too.
to second that, Chairman.
Thank you very much. All those in... Carla, give me a second. Yeah. All those in favour? Thank you. Any against? That's carried also. Thank you. Item number 23, any urgent matters of debate? I have none. Item 24, exclusion of press and public.
Chairman, can I move the rest of the agenda on block?
Okay. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you very much. I hereby close the meeting. Date of our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday the 24th of April. And thank you very much for your attendance. Information for those heading to the Harwich Peninsula. There's been an incident on the A120. The road is closed in both directions. It's a long journey home. Good night.
Please be upstanding.